Okay, shalom. Right, wonderful lesson. This is going to blow some people's minds because it's certainly blown mine. Sofia, Gnosticism, the Eye of Ra, John Lennon, and Rambam. What have these got to teach us? What is the light hidden in all these systems of belief? Okay, so let's go and have a look at John Lennon. I'm really pleased that I've been able to include John Lennon in one of my lessons. Obviously, I don't agree with absolutely everything that he's saying here, but there's some light in it. There's some light in it. We need to draw out of the light and disregard the shells that keep that light hidden. It seems to me that the only true Christians were the Gnostics, who believed in self-knowledge, like becoming Christ themselves, reaching the Christ within. The light is the truth. Turn on the light. So that's accredited to John Lennon. We will be coming back because we're going to have a look at what this Gnosticism is. First of all, however, let's get some foundation, Torah foundation to these concepts. So we don't start straying away from the root, which is the problem behind a lot of the faith systems, the belief systems. They're detached from the root, or they're detached from the name, a revelation of the name YHWH, or they've distorted the understanding of the name YHWH in some way. And this gives us evil outer shells to all these wisdoms that are trapped in those evil outer shells of different belief systems. Rambam, the known, the knower, and the knowledge. So first of all, he said the founding principle and all founding principles and the pillar of all wisdom is to know that God exists. Okay, so that's taken from Ilkos Yesod HaTorah, 1:1, the opening of his book, Mishnah Torah. And Rambam's an absolute giant as a Torah scholar. But anyway, I'll probably come back to him later. So this is his phrase, and he did receive criticism for this. It wasn't, accepted. It wasn't just accepted by everyone. He's the knower, he's the knowledge, and he's the known, in reference to YHWH. And this is not within the power of any man to comprehend clearly. So that's from Ilkos Yesod HaTorah 2:1 in the same book within Mishnah Torah. Okay. Mishnah Torah is basically a codification of the entire Talmud. And it removes it from all the Agadic tales, which, as Vilna Gaon pointed out, exiles the Torah of Moshe. I've gone about on that a lot, but I haven't got time to go over those today. Okay, and then we've got this concept, because Rambam was very, very concerned with rectifying the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and he had lots of principles and lots of advice. He was actually a physician. He was actually a physician to the Sultan in Egypt. He was very high ranking, very, very, a total and absolute genius. So these are some guidance to eating, bearing in mind that we are to correct the defect that we had in eating, i.e. eating caused the sin, the first man to fall. And according to the sages, eating, and not just talking about physical eating, although they are related, the physical eating and the spiritual counterpart is part of our rectification process. So this is Rambam's advice: never eat unless hungry, nor drink unless thirsty. Never put off relieving oneself even for an instant. Do not eat until the stomach is full. Rather eat until the stomach is full, only 3/4 full. Until the stomach is only 3/4 full. Eating a small quantity of bad food is less harmful than overeating healthy foods. Overeating is poison to the body. Right, let's go and have a look at some lesson objectives. We've got this, and this is the statement that is the overriding statement of all my teachings. Come, let us reason together. And that means it doesn't matter what faith system that you currently adhere to, let us reason together, because there's light within both, and we can get to a higher place when we are reasoning together. So come, let us reason together is 202, which is 2 times 101, which is 2 times Michael, the archangel on the right, or the archangel of Israel, and also the guardian angel, the advocate for the nations, and I talk about that concept a lot. So 202 plus 94. 94 is 2 times Yaakov, the ordinal of Yaakov 47. Okay, so together they come to 296. 296, so with this, we've got to understand Yaakov represents truth, Michael represents advocacy for that truth. What truth? Od Yosef Chai, Yosef is still alive. So come now, let us reason together. This is another aspect of this. In other lessons we've looked at it being linked to the concept of Mashiach, and also that Yosef is still alive. In this lesson we're linking it up to Aaron. So Aaron, why? Because he's concerned with, he is opposite the fruit of the tree of knowledge, a correction for eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. I'll show you why through Gematria, and I'll also show you how important it is to have, to understand and connect to the whole concept of Aaron. Okay, 256 regular, 40 ordinally, that's a very messianic number. It's the letter M, it represents the womb, through which Mashiach is born, and also connected to the 40 days Moshe was up Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, and 40 days testing in the wilderness, through which Mashiach ben Yosef, Yeshua, fought off he didn't succumb to any of the temptations of Satan, although he was tested to the absolute maximum point of testing. I've pointed out this before. Moshe overwhelmed the angels in their territory. Yeshua overwhelmed Satan in his territory, the desert. They need to be brought together. They need to be brought together. Moshe and Yeshua need to be brought together. Nobody has been able to withstand the angels in their own territory, only Moshe. Yaakov withstood the angel, but it was in his own territory. Yeshua went into the desert and withstood Satan in his own territory. Okay, Yaakov fought an angel who was Satan, but there is a connection between them all, obviously we can see that. Aaron is the high priest, which is chesed, loving kindness. Chesed is a power that is able to get the light of Chokhmah out of the darkness, or to highlight the light of wisdom hidden in darkness. Aaron is also the mouthpiece of Moshe, the power to advocate like Michael. So we'll be looking at that very shortly. And then again, Aaron is opposite the fruit of the tree of knowledge, a correction for eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge. The reason why I'm going to be looking at these overall lesson objectives before we go and dive into the actual specific lesson objectives is because they are so relevant. We need to be aware of this so that we don't become contaminated by the evil shells that surround other belief systems. When we're talking about looking into Gnosticism, which contains error and lies, and Sophiology, which contains error and lies, and Egyptology, which contains error and lies, you've got to go in, rooted in the right place, so you don't get contaminated by that the evil outer husks, the lies that trap the light that's hidden within. Right, so in this lesson, these are the specifics to this lesson. These are the overall objectives of the lesson. What is Gnosticism? What are the errors? What is the hidden light, truth within? What is Sophiology? What are the errors, concealments? What is the hidden truth, light within? What is the Eye of Ra? How can light hidden in the concepts found in Egyptian mythology help us to attain the ultimate understanding and knowledge of YHWH? What is the ultimate knowledge, and what is the ultimate goal of this knowledge for all humanity? What is the concept of unity and love between the divine male and the divine female found in Judaism, Christianity, Egyptology and Gnosticism, the pinnacle of love and the goal of creation? If this love is not enough, i.e. not the pinnacle of creation, what is? And I want to just root this into what Rambam says, because we are building on that foundation that Rambam stated. The foundation of all foundations is belief in the existence of God. So that's the foundation. We're wanting to get to the pinnacle in this lesson. So we've got to be linked into that foundation, because if we're not building on that foundation, we're going to stray. If this love, however, is not enough, what is? So we want to build on that. We've got to get to the top of the pyramid. And, that's obviously I'm not referring to the Egyptian pyramids. I'm talking we've got to get to the pinnacle. We've got to get to the height of what is the purpose of the belief system and the entire what is the entire purpose of creation. That's what I'm basically trying to reveal in this lesson. But first of all, like I say, let's get properly grounded in the overall lesson objectives, because these overall lesson objectives, once we're grounded in these and once we've got understanding of these, we can then answer these without getting bitten by the snake, the liar, the serpent. So let's go and have a look. First of all, we're going to have a look at this Aaron in the capacity as high priest, which is chesed, loving kindness, because it's very relevant. I've gone through this before, getting the light out from darkness. So we're going to look at these different belief systems that represent both light and darkness in some way. Okay, maybe not in the exact same context as what we've got here, but it can be applied. I've gone through this before, but I've done some additions to it that are really very interesting. Some recent numbers that I've come across that are definitely directly related to this. Rabbi Shimon opened the discussion saying, he reveals the deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells in him. That's Daniel 2:22. He reveals the deep and secret things means that the Holy One, blessed be He, reveals the deep and secret things. He reveals all the supernal concealed depths, namely the central column that reveals the depths of the two columns of Bina. Why did He reveal them? It is because He knows what is in the darkness, namely in the darkness on the left, which is Gevura, where the light of Chokhmah sinks, the light of wisdom sinks because of the lack of Hasidim, which is the light of kindness, loving kindness. If there was not darkness, so we have to have the darkness, it's an essential part of our process and maturation process, all the lies, all the concealment. If there was not darkness, the light would not later be revealed through the central column. The light is revealed from the darkness itself. He knows what is in the darkness, meaning that He included it in the right column. Therefore, He developed deep and concealed things. For were it not for the darkness of the left, the depths and the concealed would not be revealed. Then the light dwells with Him. What is this light? It is the light that has been revealed from within the darkness, which is Chokhmah. And there's another aspect to this. I'm not going to go through it today, but that light that has come out of this darkness, that was concealed and now is revealed because of chesed, loving kindness, that is unrevealed in Malkuth, which is synonymous with the mouth. Okay, so we can look at that. You know, when I talk about the whole need to advocate, like Aaron, like Michael, that are on the right. The high priest is the role of the advocate on the right. And they're the advocates for all humanity. They're the ones saying, give positive energy, positive judgments, and things like that. Okay, so when it says Aaron is Moshe's mouthpiece, he represents that kindness, and with Aaron is able to draw out that is the power, the light of chesed, that is able to draw out of the darkness the light of wisdom. And the only place where that light of wisdom is revealed is in Malkuth, and like I say, that's related to the mouth. So we've got to speak. Once we've got this wisdom out, one of the ways that we can manifest that wisdom is through speaking it. Okay, because speech itself is an action. We're moving our lips and we're moving our tongues, and it's part of the world of action in what we live now. Asiya, the lower worlds, the like I say, the worlds in which we live that are most closely related to this physical existence in which we live. Okay, I hope you're following me with that. Anyway, let's go and have a look at this. He reveals, so that's why it's connected to Aaron and Michael, the concept of high priest and chesed, because they've got the power to draw that wisdom out, but then they're also the mouthpiece with which they can advocate and speak that wisdom and bring that light into this world in which we live and build up the kingdom of the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven through the action of speaking and acts of kindness, obviously. Aaron was an Eved, he was the high priest, he was the one that was doing the work in the temple. So it's this way that you serve YHWH as well. Bearing in mind as well, there's a wonderful teaching from the sages that talk about Aaron's service. When he served YHWH in the temple, and he was, you know, if you look at the whole, even like lighting the temple menorah, there's a whole service involved in that, and, you know, cleaning the lamps and things like that. Now, I have some proper oil lamps that I light for my Shabbat table with the wicks in and everything. That are my Shabbat candles, and let me tell you, they're not easy to clean. Because you get soot and char all around, and they're really not easy to clean. It's as simple as that. So, you know, it's quite a laborious task. Now, when he set about, and sometimes I think to myself, I've got to change the wicks, and it's like a trouble to pull the wicks out and cut new wicks. And you know, Aaron did the service in the temple every day with the same enthusiasm and dedication and intention he did on the last day of his service that he did on the first day of his service. And we got to be like Aaron, you know, and he was a peacemaker, was Aaron. He brought peace between all the children of Israel, brought them to a place of peace. Yet he wasn't perfect. He was also part in the construction of the golden calf, you know, with the Erev Rav. So we can learn a lot from Aaron. He reveals the profound and secret things. He knows what is in the dark, and light dwells in him. Daniel 2, chapter 2, 22. 3,128 plus 437 is 3,655, which is 5 times 731. 731, the luminary is rectified. So Hamet or Roth, it's spelled defective in the Torah, missing these two vavs. Bear in mind, these two vavs come up again later in the teaching. They represent the truth. Truth about Mashiach ben Yosef, the truth about Mashiach ben David, who are the luminaries, the sun and the moon. 658 plus 73, 73 is Chochmah. Okay. 731 together, so linked up to here. We need a revelation of the luminaries and the truth regarding Moshiach. Okay, that is a fundamental wisdom that we need, the truth about Mashiach. Nekmath, revenge, 590 regular, 68 ordinally, which is, I'm not going to go through that now. 658, same as the luminaries, the regular of the luminaries. Okay. The revenge for the spilt blood of the servants that are caused because we don't have the truth regarding the concept of Moshe, like what is contained within Judaism, and we don't have the truth regarding the concept of Mashiach ben Yosef that's trapped and exiled into Edomite Christianity, Edomite mentality, and because of that, lots of blood is spilt. Ultimately, that blood will need to be avenged, nekmath dam, avenge of the blood. So that includes the spilling of the blood of Yeshua and all the Christians' blood who's been spilt, carrying that light of truth within the exile of Edom to all the four corners of the world, faithfully serving the revelation of YHWH as it's been revealed to them, and also the spilling of the blood of the Jews, throughout all history, the 2,000 years of Edomite history has been very bloody for the Jewish people in all the places into which they've been exiled, and especially the Second World War, the Holocaust. Okay, horrific spilling of blood. It will need to be revenged. The ultimate revenge is to reveal the truth that Judaism and Christianity conceal. Okay, which is a revelation of the name YHWH. Right. Tish Al asks 731. 56 ordinarily, which is teshuva, hey, return of the letter hey, that will come up again in the lesson. Teshuva, the word teshuva, repentance, that's the ordinal for repentance also, means the return of the letter hey, the last letter hey of the name YHWH, which is the Shekinah, the Holy Shekinah, which has fallen into exile with us. It's a concept, basically the concept of Mashiach. And then we've got this. We talked about the two letter vavs, the two missing vavs from this word luminary. You've got, this is vav spelt out to the second fill-in when vav is filled with a vav. So you would have vav, and this is the square ordinal of it. So 36, 36, 36 and 36, because that is the sixth letter of the Aleph Bet. So the square ordinal is together, it's 144. This is when the vav is filled with an aleph, and then this is the vav filled with an aleph to the second fill-in, which according to Arizal is the essence of anything, is when it's filled to the second fill-in. So that's Vav, Aleph, Vav, comes to 967 square ordinal. Mispar Gadol, so when the pay is 800. Together it comes to 1111. Square ordinal Mispar Gadol, it's Moshe and Yeshua. This is the wisdom hidden in the darkness, Moshe in exile, and the throne of Mashiach ben Dawid, which is Mashiach ben Yosef in exile in Christianity and Judaism. Okay, they represent the luminaries, the sun and the moon and things like that, the concept of Mashiach. Ask for my name, Tish'al Lishmi, 731, so it's this same word, 731, Tish'al, and this is when Yaakov is fighting Esav's guardian angel, Hasatan. Ask for my name. Okay, we'll come across that verse. It comes to 1131. That's the regular of it. The regular of Tish'al and the regular of Lishmi, 380, comes to 1111. 1111 is the Mispar Gadol of Melech Yisrael. So we want Melech Yisrael revealed. Melech Yisrael also, the regular of Melech Yisrael is 631. The ordinal of is 100. Add it together, 731. So we've got Melech Yisrael related to this here where Yaakov is asking for the name of the angel he's fighting. Okay, and ultimately through this battle, we can see the Melech, the king of Yisrael, revealed. And what did his name get changed to? It got changed from Yaakov to Yisrael by Satan himself. Satan himself ultimately had to bless Yaakov with that name, Yisrael. So that's the ultimate darkness, isn't it? And the ultimate light coming out of that darkness, to be blessed by Satan himself, the ultimate source of darkness. Or the ultimate, not the source of darkness, but the ultimate revelation of that darkness, the ultimate darkness, concealment. 731, Melech Yisrael, is exactly the same as Moshe and Yeshua, 731. If you add them together, this is what it's all about. Melech Yisrael is the ultimate Melech Yisrael is revealed when we've got unity between Moshe and Yeshua. We talk about it all the time. Remember and do not forget, Zachor el Tishhach, 992 plus 119 comes to 1111. And then this is the verse. And Yaakov asked and said, now tell me your name. And he said, why is it that you ask for my name? And he blessed him there. And that's supposedly Esav, which represents our flesh and represents our, the nations, and represents body and represents the vessels that contain the light. The guardian angel of that is Satan, Hasatan. The guardian angel over our soul is Michael. Okay. So again, these are some new numberings. All those numberings I've come across before. These are numberings regarding this getting the light out of the darkness that are new. So we've got that verse, and then this, and they prepared the gift until Yosef would come at lunchtime, for they heard that they would eat bread. Genesis 43:25. So we've got this, until Yosef would come at lunchtime. Comes to 586, regular, and an ordinal of 145 together. They come to 731. Okay, I'm not going to go into these details, but there is a link to Metatron there. That's another teaching. Edom, which is the exile into which we're exiled. So you've got the regular and ordinal come to 75. The Mispar Gadol, which is Torah, 611 is Torah. So we've got the entire Torah hidden in this exile. 35 is the ordinal of Yonah, and we need the Yonah, the sign of Mashiach, the only sign given to wicked and adulterous generation, Yonah, comes to 646. Okay, if we add this and this together, it comes to 662, which is 2 times 331. Ephraim, 331 is Ephraim. Okay, as in Mashiach ben Ephraim, and that number comes up later as well. We've got this then. This number, the Mispar Gadol, plus this number here comes to 731. So we've got a link there between Yosef. Where is Yosef? Mashiach ben Yosef is hidden in Edom for an ultimate purpose, to reveal the Torah. What is the Torah? A revelation of the name YHWH, and nothing else beside him. Death swallowed up eternally, Isaiah 731, 128 ordinary. This is a very important number, by the way. It comes two together, 859, which is the regular and ordinal of Yeshua HaMashiach. Tahom, deep. This is taken from when the Spirit of God hovers over the, there's the primeval waters, if you like, the deep and things like that. There's different names in that verse, and one of them is Tahom, the deep. Comes to 451, 46 ordinally, which comes to 497. The Mispar Gadol is 1011 plus 57, that's HaMoshiach, ordinal of HaMoshiach. They come to 1068. If we add the 451 plus the 1011 together here, we get 1462, which is 2 times 731. And this, the rabbis said, this particular part, there's 4 words within that verse. Okay, so I've just brought this verse up so you can see what I'm talking about. Now the earth was astonishingly empty, and darkness was on the face of the deep. Okay, so you've got 4 words there. Tohu, v'bohu, v'choshech, al panei, tahom, the deep. And the deep is referring to the final Edomite exile. The rest are like Babylon and etc., etc. But this is referring to the Edomite Greco-Roman mindset. So Tahom, and it comes to 497. But it's also related to all this. Major concepts, because this is the darkness from which we have to get the truth out. And it's all about Emunah. Emunah, 497 is square ordinal of Emunah, faith. Faith in the name YHWH, and specifically the last 2 aspects of faith as outlined by Rambam in his 13 principles of faith: faith in the coming of Mashiach and faith in the resurrection of the dead. And what ultimately is resurrection of the dead? It is physical resurrection of the dead. It is rectifying our physical reality. How do we do that? Physical reality is in a fallen state, okay, because it's governed by ego, hasatan, the forces of evil, selfishness, and this is very destructive and always leads to death. But it needs to be refined and to be rectified and transformed from chaos and from ego into shalom. Once it's transformed into shalom, it will fill up with the light of the name YHWH. And we're going to look at where that light comes from. That comes from the unity of the Torah of Moshe, the revelation of the name within the Torah of Moshe, and then revelation within the Torah of Mashiach ben Yosef. So they two need to come together first, and then those vessels of shalom that have been prepared, that rectify our physical nature, will unite perfectly with the light, and we will see a resurrection from the dead. And we will see that transformation of physicality, because physicality will finally have the purpose for which it was created, which is to receive a revelation of the name YHWH and be one with it, the vessels and the light. The physical reality is a vessel, and like the body, and the name YHWH is the soul, Yisrael, the soul. Okay. So faith is very much, and as we've got to rectify those 2 faiths, faith in the resurrection of the dead, we've got to be aware of what that actually is. It's a resurrection of entire physical reality that is, the code name for that is Esav, Edom, things like that. But there is a purpose for that. So YHWH, we can dwell below as above, dwell in place below. Hamut, death, 451, 46, exactly the same as Tahom. I think it's the same letters, isn't it? Yeah. Yes, it is. It's exactly the same letters. So 497, Emunah overcomes death. Okay. Emunah in rectifying our faith in YHWH is the power to overcome death. And that's why we're in this exile. And then finally, and he said, "O Lord God, how will I know that I will inherit it?" This is a phenomenal, phenomenal verse, by the way. This is talking about Abraham inheriting the land, which is synonymous with Malkuth, the land of Israel. You've got the people of Israel and then the land of Israel. And Abraham had faith in that he would have offspring like the stars in heaven, but he didn't have complete faith in the process or how he would acquire the entire land, how he would actually inherit the entire land. Okay, so we're rectifying that. lack of faith. Basically, it amounts to a lack of faith in the way YHWH works in physical creation. When we've got the appearance of, that there's another force involved, evil that can prevent it, like that's synonymous with the Canaanite people. These massive, powerful forces, these 7 powerful Canaanite nations that can prevent us from accessing that promise. I've talked about it before. So this is 252. The square regular of this entire verse is 184,212, which is 252 times 731. So it's linked up to all this. The 252, by the way, is Rav Lach. It is enough. And these were the word that was spoken to Moshe when he was begging and pleading not to go into exile. And YHWH said, Rav Lach, it is enough for you. And that can also be translated as a teacher for you. Like Moshe, you've got to go into that exile in order to get the light that's trapped in that exile out. It's part of your own soul. And the Mashiach contains, is related to the souls of all humanity. So there is a purpose for the soul of the Mashiach to be trapped in exile, as in Yeshua trapped in Edomite exile, Moshe trapped in Erev Rav exile. There's a great purpose for it, and it's the will of YHWH, because he pleaded, Yeshua pleaded, take this cup from me, Father, except it be your will. And it was his will that he descended, and he went straight into the hands of the Romans at that point, and he wasn't afraid of dying. He was afraid of the descent into this evil, and he was afraid of the what he would have to face to overcome those forces of evil, to reveal that revelation of that name, YHWH, through this darkness, for that light to finally prevail over the darkness. He was very afraid, so was Moshe, and to this day we have not seen that light fully revealed. It is still trapped and exiled in darkness, and that's what these teachings are about. They're trying to take that light and bring it to a place of revelation. It's not just my teachings, there's lots of people doing that, and the Jewish people have been doing that, and the Christian people have been trying to do that for a long time. It's a big battle against the forces of evil, but those forces of evil are not independent of YHWH. They are created by him for the purpose of a revelation, the concealment that from which the revelation of his name is birthed, if you like. Right, so go back to this then. Aaron is opposite. Let's bring all these up as well so we don't lose the actual lesson objectives. Aaron is opposite the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Now we've had a look at this, haven't we, and seen how important it is. That what is the light? The light is that the unity between Moshe and Yeshua. I talk about it all the time. Aaron is, and the concept of Mashiach. Aaron is the opposite of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, a correction for eating of the fruit of the tree of a correction for eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge. We talked about the correction for eating, didn't we, from Rambam, and that physical correction to our eating of all kinds. You could replace the word eating with consuming. So the things that we consume, when we're taking more than what we need, we do it's selfish, we're indulging, it's lust, it's pleasure, it leads to death, it's a form of poison. We've got to just eat for this. We've got to eat for the sake of a revelation of the name YHWH, nothing else beside that. And all our mundane physical activities, our thoughts, words, and deeds should be towards that end, to serve YHWH, like Aaron served, with as much intention and love and dedication on the first day of our service as on the last, until we complete the task. Right, let's go and have a look why Aaron is connected to the fruit of the tree of knowledge. So the fruit of the tree of knowledge, there's 4 fruits in total, 3 outlined in Talmud, 1 in the Midrash. Let's quickly go through these. So Aaron comes to all these numbers. It's this one that we're looking at, which is this number here, the regular and the ordinal, and then the Mispar Gadol, regular and ordinal added together, 1,253. Aaron represents the light of Hasidim. We've already talked about that. So we've got grape, that's one of the fruits of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that represents Moshe. In the teaching that I did on Aaron, I go through this in more detail. I'm going to quickly go through it because it's just knowledge that we need before we can go and take this light that's trapped within these different belief systems, including Egyptology. We've got to have a good solid foundation. We can't just wander into these dark corners of the world and without the proper without being properly equipped, else we're going to be overwhelmed by the evil. And we're not going to get the light. We're simply going to take on the evil, which is what happens. So we've got to have the light of truth, which is the name YHWH ultimately. Fig Tahane is 456 plus 42 ordinally comes to 498. That's Mashiach ben Yosef. The fig tree, obviously Yeshua cursed the fig tree, is related to it. Wheat Chita is one of the other fruits of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's related to Mashiach ben David, the threshing floor, and also 32, which is both the regular and ordinal, because each of the letter is under 10 and under. Comes to 32. Lev, heart, which is the same as heart. David represents the heart, the circumcised heart, circumcised lips, circumcised male anatomy, the three aspects of circumcision. Okay, and there's always two aspects to circumcision. With the circumcised lips. Moshe was Moshe who had started with uncircumcised lips, and then YHWH sent him Aaron to be his mouthpiece because of his situation. There's two aspects to the circumcision of the male anatomy. There's the outer husk, if you like, the orla, and then there's the thin membrane, the priya. There's two aspects to the circumcision of a heart. There's the circumcision that we do for ourselves, like circumcise your hearts. We're commanded to circumcise our hearts. But then we're also informed that YHWH will circumcise our hearts. So there's two aspects. There's that we get the help from heaven, like Aaron's the help from heaven. We get the fine, thin membrane, and then there's the heart. We get the help from YHWH. We do something below, YHWH does something above. Right, if we add all these numbers up together, it comes to 643, and 643 is a very important number. It is Yosef made himself known, i.e. to his brothers. It's also the regular Yimach Shemo Zikro, may his name be erased in his memory, which is the curse of Mashiach ben Yosef. He's had the letter ayin removed from his name, Yeshu, come across that all the time. It's also Kos Yeshuath, it's Kos Bracha, cup of blessing, as is talked about in the opening of the Zohar, and the 5 fingers that surround the cup of blessing that represent the 5 Chassidim of the right hand, talking about the Chassidim, the light of Chassidim. Okay, and then it's got blood, what's equivalent to red grapes in that cup, so that's symbolising the judgments, harsh judgments. So all the ordinals come to 106, which is 2 times 53, 2 times Yeshua, ordinal of Yeshua, and also 2 times the ordinal of Yaakov, when Yaakov has got the additional Vav in his name, as is 5 times in Tanakh. Together they come to 749. 749 is the regular of Yeshua HaMashiach. And that's the ordinal of Yeshua HaMashiach. To him who made great luminaries. Okay. So we know this is talking about the luminaries. Who made them. And then this is the fruit, according to Midrash, that the tree of the knowledge was etrog, etrog is the fruit that we wave as part of the lulav, the 4 species that are waved at, we're commanded to wave during Sukkoth, the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay, so that's 610. Ordinally, 52 comes to 662. We've just had a look at that number, haven't we? Which is 2 times 331, 2 times Ephraim, meaning fruitful, and also Mashiach ben Ephraim. So we've got the 4 aspects of Mashiach, Moshe, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, and Mashiach ben Ephraim. Okay. Etrog, which means like a beautiful fruit. If we add up then the actual numbers for Moshe, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben Ephraim, we get this 2086, which is 2 times 100, 1043. The ordinals of it come to 376. Okay, so we've got 92, 116, etc. comes to 376, which is Shalom. Okay, and it's also Esav. This is the interpreter. The interpreter is the one who was between Joseph and his brothers. Okay, whilst Joseph was hidden before he'd made himself known. Comes to 233, which is Etz Chaim. The Mispagadol is 985. However, if we take this number and add it to this number is Chen, grace, and that's another light that we need illuminating as part of the name of YHWH, the grace of his name. If we put those two together, we come to 1043, which is linked up to here. Okay, so this is, the interpreter was Manasseh, according to the rabbis, Manasseh, Joseph's son. 1043, which is 7 times 149, and 149 is Melech Goyim, king of the nations. YHWH does not just want to be king over Israel, which represents the soul. YHWH wants to be king of the nations, which represents Esav and physical reality. Okay, and the Mashiach is the whole concept of Mashiach is to bring about that end. Okay, 985 is 197 times 5, and 197 is God is with us, Emmanuel. Okay, so Yeshua was like called Emmanuel. Etz Chaim, tree of life. Bereshith, this is when you spell the word Bereshith, you start off with the Bet of Bereshith, then you do the Beth Resh Aleph, Beth Resh Aleph Shin, until you've got the whole word Bereshith. It comes to a regular and an ordinal of that, which together comes to 2557. 2557 is the 376th prime, which is related to the concept of Mashiach. We're in a 7. The whole period of the cycle of Mashiach is the 6 days, which represent 6,000 years to rectify, and then the 1,000th year of Mashiach comes to 7 years, or 7 days, doesn't it, in YHWH's terms. However, 2557 is exactly the number of days, whole days in 7 years, 7 solar years. Okay, so we can see there's a time frame involved in this whole rectification process, and then the final rest that we get, the Shabbat at the end of it, is very much related to that, this shalom, to bring us to that place where we can have the shalom. And then after that, about 7,000 years, this is the 7 years small, but we've got the big 7,000 years, haven't we? Which is 1,000 times this. Then we, according to Revelation, then the forces of darkness are unleashed once again for the final battle, isn't it? Okay. Esav, therefore, 376. So we take Esav, which represents physical reality, the body, the vessel, and transform it into Shalom. And this is the whole story of the breaking of the vessels, but I'm not going to go into that now. All the Meshachim, the Messiahs, unite in order to bring the chaos to Shalom. So all the chaos of the Edomite hell, the darkness, all the chaos, all the confusion, all the, selfish ego, to subdue it to the side of holiness, and to create out of that vessels of Shalom. Primarily Mashiach ben Yosef is a power to also bring about that Shalom. So if we take these numbers, that's the 3 fruit as outlined in Talmud, that's the fruit as outlined in Midrash. Add them together, 1253 is Aaron. Okay, so he's opposite the fruit of the tree of knowledge. He's opposite that duality that we get when we've eaten from the tree of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. So Aaron is a big key figure in overcoming the power of the tree of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, and all the duality and false perception of YHWH that's created as a consequence of that. The fall of Adam. Aaron is very much helps to rectify that, and he does that through the light of Hasidim, kindness. So we've got 106, which is the ordinal of those 3 fruits, plus the ordinal of the 3 fruits in the town, plus the ordinal of the fruit. Where is it? Etrog, here. The ordinal, the 52, which is the ordinal of Mashiach, by the way. And this is the ordinal of 10 times Ani, I am. Add them together, 158. If we add this with this, all the fruits together, regular and ordinary, comes to 1411, which is exactly the same as Sarach Bat Asher. And that's 17 times 83, good times Hanukkah. Okay, and Hanukkah was the rededication of the temple, you know, the holy temple, which is our body. Let's face it, it represents our body. It represents the pinnacle of the entire physical reality. And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and faith the girdle of his loins, 1411. So there's connection there. And finally we've got Yaakov filled, 770, which is 158. It's related, the ordinal of that is Yaakov filled, when he's filled with the extra Vav, and the Vav is filled with a Yod, so the highest filling of Yaakov possible, 158. And then Yonah filled, 158. This is the sign of Mashiach. Okay, 86 ordinally, which is Elohim. Together they come to 244, and that's linked up to this as well, isn't it? 2 times that grape. Okay, so that's how Aaron, I think, did I ever, oh, let's just go back. Let's go back before we go on to this. Let's just readdress. So we've gone over these overall lesson objectives for a very good reason. That's to bring us into that place where we can now go look at these concepts and draw out the light without getting bitten by the serpent that surrounds them, guards them, the evil. Okay, so now we can have a look at this concept of Gnosticism. Right, so I'm going to just outline some of the main aspects to Gnosticism. I can't go too deeply into it because there is some really crazy stuff in there that you know, you've got to be careful to avoid. But the basic principles, I'm just going to highlight some of the basic principles where we can see a lot of light and a lot of truth in some of these basic principles. But like I say, because they're not rooted in the name YHWH, they're all askew, and that needs correcting. So the term Gnosticism is derived from the Greek word gnosis, meaning to know or knowledge. This knowledge is not intellectual but mythical, and comes through a special revelation by Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach, the Redeemer, or through his apostles. The secret knowledge reveals the key to salvation. And salvation, in terms of Gnosticism, is escaping the physical world. Dualism. Gnostics believed that the world was divided into the physical and spiritual realms. The created material world, matter, is evil and therefore in opposition to the world of the spirit, and that only the spirit is good. Adherents of Gnosticism often constructed an evil lesser god of beings of the Old Testament to explain the creation of the world, matter, and considered Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, as Holy Spiritual God. So a force to defeat this lesser god of the Old Testament, right? So there's this concept of dualism. Dualism is in all religions, by the way. It's the consequence of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. All the major religions. God. Gnostic writings often describe God as incomprehensible and unknowable. This idea conflicts with Christianity's concept of a personal God who desires a relationship with human beings. You can know God face to face. It is a truth, but there are aspects to him that are unknowable, obviously, because it's infinite. So there's an aspect of the infinite that we can't know his infinite essence, except it is his will to make known to humanity his infinite essence, and that's the entire purpose of creation, to make himself known. There is a specific aspect to himself that he makes himself known to humanity. It's called his oneness. It's an aspect of his perfection, and in that, and that's where we're heading. Basically, the entire of creation is being corrected to reveal that he wills to reveal to us, part of his infinite essence, his oneness, his absolute perfection and sovereignty. Okay, so it's there is a part that is he will make himself known. This idea conflicts with Christianity's concept of a personal God who desires a relationship with human beings. Gnostics also separate the inferior God of creation, Yahweh, and called a Demiurge, from the superior God of redemption, which is revealed through Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. So they basically say YHWH, as is written in the Torah, in the Old Testament, is basically a Demiurge. Okay, they're not far wrong with that, by the way. Not because YHWH is, it's just that the way that YHWH chose to hide himself, and part of the hiding himself is within the teachings of the Old Testament. But he is hidden, and it's for us to seek out that that's hidden. Okay, so we're going to go through that anyway, this whole concept of YHWH being a Demiurge. Salvation, so there is great truth in both these, but obviously they don't quite hit the target. Salvation, Gnosticism claims hidden knowledge as the basis for salvation, which it actually is, but it is hidden knowledge. Adherents believe that a secret revelation frees the divine spark within humans, allowing the human soul to return to the divine realm of light in which it belongs. Gnostics thus divided Christians into two categories, with one group being carnal, inferior, and the other being spiritual, superior. Only the superior, divinely enlightened persons could comprehend the secret teachings and obtain true salvations. Okay, so this there is some truth in that when you believe all this, when you're caught up in the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. All this comes as a consequence of eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So there's truth in it, obviously. But there's also a lot of concealment and lies. We need to go and have a look why. First of all, we need to look at this. And when we're looking at this, we will automatically answer this. Okay, so all my teachings that have gone on before, the whole concept of the Metatronic system and the Messianic system. So let's go and have a look at this. First of all, we've got this system of reward and punishment. It's a revealed system, what I would call the Metatronic system. Okay, so in our state of immaturity, good is hidden in evil. So we ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, then we got this concept. Evil is bad, good is good. Okay, and somehow then there's a balance. There's a whole spectrum between what is super evil and what is super good. Okay, so this is the system of reward and punishment. This is talked about in the book Da'ath T'nuvath, Knowing God's Plan, by Ramchal, Rabbi Chaim Moshe Lazato, brilliant book. It explains the way that YHWH runs the whole purpose of creation, the way he runs it through his attributes, okay, and through these various systems. So this is a revealed system. This is the main governing system of all the religions of Judaism, Christianity, Islam. It's all about reward and punishment. If I do good, I'll be rewarded, and if I do bad, I'm going to get punished. Okay, that's Metatron, and we have to serve the one who was in charge of that. The one who is in charge of that is Metatron. And on the one hand, if you do good, he'll appear to you like the angel of the Lord. If you do bad, is Samael, who's going to punish you and whip you. So you've got a carrot before you and a whip behind you, and you're just like this poor donkey, doesn't know good from, he doesn't know his head from his tail. And because there's a lot of confusion within that system, because sometimes evil people prosper and good people suffer. So it's not, sometimes you just can't figure out what is going on, but you're trapped in that system. What have I done wrong? What have I done wrong? You know, you just cannot figure it out. We know that if we do good, we're going to get punished. So we sometimes have to, if we do good, we're going to get rewarded. So sometimes, because we don't get actual rewarded in the system, then we've got to delay that reward, or we're going to get rewarded when we die, or we'll get punished when we die, and we live with that hope and that fear. It's a system of it's what we call the revealed system. And in this system, YHWH in this system, his name in this system is what the Gnostics would call the Demiurge. You know, is what they would call the Demiurge, but it's not actually the name YHWH, it's Metatron, who is called in Kabbalistic teachings the lesser YHWH. He's the one that's the prince of the world, running this entire system of reward and punishment. So when we're trapped in that system with this consciousness, because we've eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and this is our consciousness then of YHWH, which is the tree of life, we're not seeing it. We're seeing it through this dualism. And all the while where we're trapped in this system, we're under Metatron. We're not under YHWH. We're subject to Metatron, who's the slave who rules instead of the king. And he is the king. He's the prince of the world. Satan, sorry. And, you know, but let's go and have a look. So because we've got this system of reward and punishment, it then means that we've got to have things as a consequence of that. What do we have to have as a consequence of that? The whole concept of judgment then. Well, this is good and this is evil. This is a dualism. We have to have the judge of the judgment. Okay. We have to have rules that tell us what's good, and rules that tell us, rules that if we keep we're good and if we break we're evil, or rules, you know, the other way around, things that we're not allowed to do and we're good if we don't do them and evil if we do them. So we've got to have a judge over that whole system, which we think it's YHWH. Guess what? It's not. It's simply how we perceive the knower, the known, and the knowledge. YHWH, how we perceive him when we've eaten from the tree of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. Then we've got to have courts that the judge sits in order to execute judgment. We've got to have judgment day. Sounds familiar? We've got to have rewards for good, punishment for bad. We've got to have eternal deification of the good. Oh, this will last forever. If we are good, we will go to heaven and we will have eternal life. Sounds familiar? So this is our hope. So we've got the carrot in front of the little donkey and he's going after it, but he's a donkey, so he can't always get it right and falls onto theirs, and then he's got all the guilt and regret and embarrassment and shame because he's not a good donkey. He can't quite hit the mark with the good that's expected of him, so he fears that he's going to be punished and eternal damnation of the bad, because he is evil. There it goes on. Self-perpetuating system, no clear end. There's no clear end to this. It will self-perpetuate. You do bad, you get punished. You do good, you get rewarded. No clear end. Revelation of the name YHWH linked to the actions of man. So the revelation of YHWH as it appears in this system, which is not a true revelation of YHWH. So we get it's all run by Metatron, who is like the revolving sword, that blocks the way to the tree of life. So you can't get past it. You can't get access to the actual tree of life because Metatron's part of that force that stood in the way, blocking us from it. We've got to bring this down, this whole system down. We've got to recognise it, the error that it is. And until we accept that this is an error and that we need to reject it, we will be subject to it. Okay, it's as simple as that. We have got to find within us the truth to be able to say this is not YHWH. This is not YHWH. Even though our religion has told us this is YHWH, this is not YHWH. The revelation of the name YHWH linked to the actions of man. So if humanity does good, then YHWH reveals his name. And if they do bad, then he conceals it. Okay, so it's not the actual name that's been revealed or concealed. It's Metatron. That's it's not his real name. So this is where you get the concept of the Demiurge from, and it's true to a certain degree, because as long as we are subject to the tree of the effects of the eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, this is basically how we will see YHWH. And it is nothing more than a demiurge. It's nothing more than a lie, really. It's not the truth, but it's part of an ultimate good. Okay? because we have got to earn the right to have access to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because that's part of the good. So we've got to get to a place where we're spiritually mature enough to actually reject this system and all the fear and the guilt and the embarrassment and the shame. The only way we can get empowered to reject this system is with the knowledge of the truth. The ultimate knowledge, however, this is where Gnosticism is wrong. The ultimate knowledge is a revelation of the name YHWH that they clearly call the Demiurge, but they've got no understanding within that system of Gnosticism. They don't understand that the actual knowledge that we attain, that all humanity is attaining for, is a revelation of the name YHWH. So they're still subject to this system. It's still the consequence of eating the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Okay? There is another system. System of perfection. The hidden system. The hidden system of the name YHWH. YHWH doesn't reveal his name. Okay? He has something there that looks like his, that comes in the appearance of his name, but it isn't his name. He hides his name. This is a messianic system. The system of perfection. What does this entail? So YHWH, we're working in a hidden way to fulfill his will for creation. This will is only good. This good is to reveal his name in vessels of shalom, and in doing so perfect physical and spiritual creation by creating a dwelling place with us below. Physicality is not evil in and of itself. That's a delusion that comes as a result of dualism. That comes as a result of eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. To create a dwelling place with us below. Everything, even the evil of men, as a result of YHWH giving free will to men, is all factored into his plan. The evil of man cannot affect his will at all. So you rack evil up to the maximum, and it cannot prevent YHWH from revealing his name. Why? Because he created the entire system of reward and punishment. It was part of his plan to ultimately be used to reveal his name, to hide his name, to create a concealment of his name, and from that concealment to ultimately use that concealment to reveal his name, the light that comes out of the darkness, to give us a work to do. Because by allowing us to be part of that whole process, we have like earned that right to have that name revealed to us. Okay? It is not an independent force. Evil is not an independent force. It was created for an ultimate good purpose, as a concealment that would be transformed into revelation. The greater the concealment, the greater will be the final revelation. The greater the evil, the greater the final revelation. This is a big system of concealment. And that entire system, when that entire system reveals the name YHWH instead of concealing it, it will be a massive revelation that we will receive. So there's purpose for everything. YHWH created the system of reward and punishment, and this system of concealment will ultimately be used to reveal his name. I've just said that. Acting in his absolute sovereignty, at the time he wills it, because he is the only ultimate power and he decides absolutely everything, and he has made his will known to man. YHWH will reveal himself through his attribute of kindness. And this revelation will not be linked in any way to the good or evil actions of man that are determined by that system of reward and punishment, like the system of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, like that you've done good, that you've done evil. That he will reveal it, and it will not be linked in any way to the good or evil of actions. He will reveal it out with that system of reward and punishment. Then we will know there is no other power or authority except him, because we will see that that's hidden finally revealed, that we can't see at this time, the real big cog. This system of reward and punishment is a little microscopic cog compared to his infinite system of perfection. Okay, and his absolute oneness and authority that will be revealed. That system is temporary. This system, when it's revealed, his name is eternal. Okay? There's no comparison whatsoever. But there's a time frame involved while he is perfecting with us the whole of creation in order for that final revelation to be revealed. His name is he is the ultimate knowledge. He's the ultimate knowledge, the knower, the known, and the knowledge. This links back to Gnosticism, that it's only a few that are spiritual that will receive revelation, salvation. Not true. All men fell and greatly suffered in Adam. All men will be raised and blessed in Mashiach. There is no vanity or emptiness with YHWH, only good. So it didn't cause man to suffer for no reason at all. There's only good in everything. YHWH is not a demiurge. He is not this, he isn't affected by the actions of men. He does not change at all, ever. He is always good, always kind, always forgiving, always merciful, always gracious, always compassionate, always long-suffering. He never changes. The God of the system of reward and punishment changes depending. If we're good, then he's good to us, and we can hurt his feelings and make him angry. Of course we cannot. We can't change God at all. We could do as much evil as possible. God will not change as a consequence of our evil. He created that system where evil is possible. He is for an ultimate good. He's only good. He cannot change. We cannot change him from being. We can't make him angry or hateful or vindictive. We can't do that. He's an unchanging God. He never changes. He is always and absolutely good. And we've got to be garbed up in that knowledge. Because until we accept that he's only good and everything happens for good, we're going to stumble and we're never going to get access to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So there you base it. So there's light within that system of Gnosticism, that belief system of Gnosticism. The reason why we've got to go get the light out is because there's people who are attached to that system of belief. That it's ultimately the souls that are attached to that system of belief that need to be redeemed. Redeemed by what? Redeemed by the light of the name YHWH and the truth. That's what redeems. The truth shall set you free. Set you free from what? Set you free from the false beliefs that keep you enslaved in that Metatronic system. Enslaved to the tree of the knowledge of good and bad mentality. Enslaved in immaturity and suffering a consequence of that lie continually. Until we are aroused up and awakened with the ultimate knowledge. YHWH and nothing else beside. There's YHWH and nothing else beside him. And what does that mean? There's nothing but good. We just have to have the eyes to see that. And we have been blinded by the consequence of eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And not able to see the truth because it's hidden from us. And it's hidden only for a good so that we will seek and find. Okay, so that's my take on Gnosticism. Obviously there's some light in there, but the light, because it's not attached to the root, it's become disconnected, and because it's disconnected, it becomes subject to the forces of exile, evil and lies, darkness. It needs to be brought back into the light. Okay. Right, so we're going to have a look at a verse that's it's going to allow us to understand this concept that it's really not about being good and evil, the duality, the Metatronic ways of thinking, the reward and the punishment, the good and the evil, the revelation of the name and the concealment of the name if we do good or bad. It's not about that. Why? Because we've got this verse that tells us this is where the Torah, if we read it with the eyes, if we read it when we finish in our fallen state from eating from the tree of good and knowledge, the knowledge of good and evil, if we read in these same words, we're going to create the demiurge that is Metatron that the Gnostics talk about. We're simply going to create the demiurge because we have not got eyes to see the truth. Right, so let's just point out the light that's hidden in the Torah that reveals the name YHWH very clearly for us. This is one of the verses that does that. And God saw all that he made, and behold, it was very good. And it was evening, and it was morning, the sixth day. This has got to be rooted within, it's got to be rooted as well within, attached to the Torah of Moshe and attached to the Torah of Mashiach ben Yosef. So it's got to be interpreted with those two revelations together. That's the ideal interpretation. That is the tree of life interpretation. That's the single eye interpretation of this that leads to a revelation of the actual name YHWH, as opposed to this kind of demiurge YHWH of the system of reward and punishment, which is not the truth, but it is part of an ultimate truth. Okay, Genesis 1:31 is the 31st verse in Torah, which is the exact gematria of El, God, and this is the name attributed to God that is associated with the attribute of chesed, kindness. It's got 31 plus 13, ordinal. 13 ordinal is ahava and echad, love and oneness. So together going to come to 44, which is one of the fillings out of the name YHWH. When you take He and it's equivalent to 14, like it's split into a dalet and a yod, like the same value of David. If you look at the letter He, which is, let's have a look here, this can be seen as a daleth, and this can be a He. Daleth is 4, daleth and a yod. Daleth is He, yod is 10, so together they're 14. So if you spell out YHWH, where the He is 14, it comes to 44. So you've got 10, 14, 6 and 14, and I think that comes to 44. Yes, it does. Okay, so chesed is one of the fillings out, and that daleth and the yod it's related to Mashiach ben Dawid, the daleth, Mashiach ben Yosef, the yod. Okay, so chesed also related to the name YHWH. That's revealed through the concept of Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben Dawid. It's got a regular of, this entire verse has got a regular of 3065, an ordinal of 500. Together they come to 3565. 3065 is 5 times 613. 613 is the number of mitzvahs. Okay? The number of mitzvahs, that's the work that we have got supposed to do. Okay, so this verse is a correction for that, isn't it? It's a correction for that entire system, where it's hard for me to put into words, but within Judaism at present, it's enslaved into this Metatronic system of reward and punishment. So people do the mitzvahs for the wrong reasons. They're doing the mitzvahs for some kind of ultimate reward or to avoid some punishment. But the ultimate reward, the ultimate purpose of all actions is to bring about a revelation of the name YHWH in vessels of shalom. Okay, that's so this whole, at the moment, the concept of the mitzvah is enslaved within that Metatronic system. But when we bring that concept of avodah, service to Hashem, into the realm of holy, which is to serve YHWH with a single purpose of revealing his name in truth, as an never changing, all merciful, all good revelation of his name, then he's worthy of service. YHWH is worthy of service. He's worthy of every thought, of every word and every deed that we could possibly do. Okay, so a revelation of his name is a rectification, and that 613 is also linked up to our physical bodies. It's the number of bones and the number of sinews. 248 plus 365. Okay, and they're split into the negative and positive commandments. Okay, so the truth is a revelation. Truth is a rectification of that. So that, we don't even need a reward. The revelation of his name, or even to know that we are actually serving YHWH himself, because he's worthy of every thought, word and deed. This is true liberty and freedom. Okay, it's just a rectification for that. So we can see within this verse some connection to that whole concept, and also, like I say, it's the bones and sinews, so some kind of rectification for the entire of our physical reality. For our physical reality to be transformed through our thoughts, word and deed. So our physicality is even serving YHWH as it should. you know, because we've got the King of Kings over kings before us, and we've no desire to serve anything other than that. We're not wanting to live to serve ourselves. We want not our own ego. What can we get out of it? What's our reward in this, or whatever? You know, what's our motivation? I just want for myself, self. It's you live to serve and please the Creator, because in doing so, this is the pinnacle of your existence, because He's so worthy, and he's so requiting of that love, and He's requiting of that service. You know, there's no vanity. It's all good. Mispah Gadol of this verse is 4,185 plus 522, very important number. 4,185 here is 31, so chesed times 135. I'm not going to do a full analysis in that. I'm just going to point that number out. Here, look. So, Wahine tov me'od, and behold, it was very good. Okay, and this is what we need to look at. It's all right pointing this out verse, but this is the key critical element of this verse. It's going to liberate us from that system of reward and punishment and bring us into a consciousness of the name YHWH and his hidden system of perfection, to bring us over into that way of interacting and perceiving YHWH and give us that knowledge that we need. And behold, it was very good. 128, very critical number. Go and have a look at that. 65 ordinally, which is a multiple of 13, isn't it? Yeah, so 5 times 13 is 65, which is 5 times Ahava, up here again related to Ahava, love and Echad, oneness. Together they come to 193. 128 is 2 to the power 7, so 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. I think I've got that right. It's 128 anyway. 2 to the power 7. So that's like a correction of that duality, isn't it? You know, we see things, you know, through a duality, through reward and punishment, good and evil. So 193 times 2 is 386, which is the gematria for Yeshua. But there's no other connections here. This 522 here is the filling out of Yeshua. So each letter of the name Yeshua, as it's spelt out, as it sounds, Yud, Shin, Vav, Ayin, comes to 522, 117 ordinally. Together they come to 639, which is exactly the same as the tree of knowledge. So he is the wholly opposite from the consciousness of the tree of knowledge. It's had da'ath. That's got an ordinal of 81. And 81 is the filling out, the ordinal of Moshe. Okay, Mem Shin He. So that's the ordinal value of that. Okay, so the tree of knowledge, the way you overcome the power of the tree of the knowledge is a unity between Yeshua and Moshe. That unity overcomes the concealment of the name YHWH, and this 72 is the highest filling out of the name YHWH when Vav is filled with a Yud. We will come up to Vav. So here Vav is filled with a Vav, Vav, Vav. We've already had a look at Vav, Aleph, Vav. And then when it's filled Vav, Yud, Vav, okay, YHWH comes to 72. So this is also a rectification for the concealment of that name, isn't it? Opposite this is a revelation of the name at the highest level possible, the level of absolute. So it's all connected to that. And then this is where we're going, because we've got to be aware, we've got to be conscious that we're not evil and we're not good. We are very good, and there's a difference. We are not just good, we are not just evil, we are very good. We are at a whole different level that doesn't require us even to think in terms of good and bad. We need to be thinking in terms of being very good. So, Bereshith Rabbah 9:7, Rabbi Nachman said in Rabbi Shmuel's name, behold, it was good refers to the good desire, and behold, it was very good refers to the evil desire. It only says very good after man was created with both the good and bad inclinations. In all other cases, it only says, and God saw that it was good. Can then the evil desire be very good? That would be extraordinary, but without the evil desire, however, no man would build a house, take a wife, and beget children. And thus said Solomon, again I consider all labour and all excelling in work, that it is man's rivalry with his neighbour. That's from Ecclesiastes 4:4. So there's purpose for this evil desire, and this is the consciousness that we've got to start to attach to. That it's not evil in and of itself. It's only evil if we've got selfish, egotistical desires. Okay? And then we've got this written also in the Talmud. So this is the Midrash, this is the Talmud. It says, the ancient sages ordered a fast for 3 days and 3 nights, whereupon the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, was surrendered to them. He came forth from the Holy of Holies like a young fiery lion. Look where he was abiding. One of the rabbis said to him, realize that if you kill him, the world goes down. They imprisoned him for 3 days, then looked in the whole land of Israel for a fresh egg and could not find it. Thereupon they said, what shall we do now? Shall we kill him? The world would then go down. Shall we beg for half mercy? They do not grant halves in heaven. They put out his eyes and let him go. It helped inasmuch as he no more entices men to commit incest. So quite interesting, isn't it? It's interesting to understand that there's a purpose for our evil inclination that can be utilised for good. That can be, instead of being egotistical and chaotic, it can be transformed for shalom, i.e. building houses, procreating, using to serve the name YHWH in other ways. Okay, but there's obviously an aspect to it that we need to diminish. They put out his eyes and let him go. Okay, so Yeshua has gone into the Edomite exile, which is synonymous with Esav, which is synonymous with the evil inclination. So he has descended, the concept of Mashiach has descended into Esav. Okay, and what have they done to him? They put out his eyes. They took the letter Ayin off his name and called him the curse Yeshu. Yimach Shemo Zikro, may his name be erased in his memory. So there's a reason for that. Okay, and this links back to Egyptology. It links back to Egyptology. It's because when we have got the concept that the evil inclination is evil, and we haven't yet subdued it to the side of shalom, where it is for the serving YHWH for the ultimate purpose of a revelation and a unity of that revelation with the vessels of shalom that we've created to bring about peace on earth and the revelation of Mashiach ben David. I talk about this all the time. When we are seeing good and evil as a consequence of eating from the sheet of the knowledge of good and evil, I think I got that right. There's some aspect to this where obviously they put out his eyes and let him go. This must be connected in some way to what they did to Yeshua, who descended into Esav. He descended into Esav in order to overwhelm it and subdue it to the side of holy. But they've treated him as Esav. But he is he says, I'm the resurrection of the dead. He says, I am the resurrection. Resurrection of what? It's only physical matter can die. So only physical matter can be resurrected. He's talking about resurrecting physicality for the purpose that I've already explained many times. Okay, so they put Esau, and Arizal calls him a reincarnation of Esav. But we're not talking about Esav as in, the man Esav. We're talking about the entire concept of physicality. And Mashiach ben Yosef is part of that hidden system that's perfecting the entire of creation to bring about that ultimate will of YHWH. Okay, I hope you're with me with that. Let's see what else we've got then. Right, so we're going to go and have a look. Just let me go back. We need to go and have a look at this number, 128, and behold, it was very good. I will just tell you something now. You've got to meditate on this. Every day you've got to tell yourself, I am very good. I am very good. Ani tov ma'od, because that is the truth. So even when we do things that we have been so conditioned to see as bad and evil, you've got to keep telling yourself, I am very good. So be aware that ultimately you're in a process of being rectified in a very hidden way for an ultimate good to receive. But we've got to tell ourselves that we are very good. Because consciousness of being, it's like a mantra in our mind. It's going to help us, liberate us from all the guilt and all the embarrassment that hinders us and causes us to hide from YHWH because we perceive ourselves as inadequate. So we hide from the one who's truly adequate, don't we? We've got to continually tell ourselves, I am very good. And even when we perceive that we have fallen or committed a sin that we've been conditioned to think has been evil, we've got to say, even this will turn for good. And look for ways to transform it from darkness into good. And know we're in a process of healing. So until we're fully healed, and all our physicality is fully healed, we're in a state of sickness. Okay, we're in a state of sickness because we ate the poison from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, so our flesh is sick as a consequence of that. And we've got to go through a proper healing process. And there's 49 levels, there's 49 sicknesses, if you like, that's been put upon us. And we've got to heal from all that sicknesses. And Mashiach ben Yosef bore our sicknesses. He took upon himself all these sicknesses, and through him we are ultimately healed. But that means we've got to attach to him in order to go through that complete healing. Okay, but we're in a process of manifesting that healing, manifesting that well-being, manifesting that shalom, manifesting that refuah shalem, complete healing. We aren't there yet. And until we are there, we haven't even got true free will. We haven't even got true free will because we're not fully healed. So we are subject to the forces of evil on account of the sicknesses. Okay, the consequence of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So when we do something wrong, don't just see yourself as evil. You've got to say, I'm sick. I need to be healed. You've got to attach yourself to the provision that YHWH made to heal us, Mashiach ben Yosef, who bears our stripes. Bears our sicknesses upon him. We've got to attach to that and allow that light to illuminate us and allow that to bring us to a healing where we are no longer under the influence of this sickness that would actually cause us to do anything other than serve the name YHWH with love and joy. I mean, we're sick if we can't accomplish that in thought, word and deed. We're sick. We've got to see ourselves. We've got to also see that this was all part of the plan for YHWH, for an ultimate good. So instead of beating ourselves up, you wouldn't go to somebody who's sick and, burden them as a result. You'd go try and heal that person. You would like Yeshua, the whole story of the Good Samaritan. You'd do the whole neighbour. You'd be good to your neighbour. Something was talked about here, neighbour here. That is a man's rivalry with his neighbour. This is a conflict between the good inclination and the bad inclination. But if your neighbour's sick, you've got to do everything to heal it. Our body is simply sick. It's been poisoned, and we've got to, not beat up and walk past and ignore because we're too ashamed, because our inner priest and our inner Levite and our inner Pharisee doesn't want to, has judged that side of us as evil and wicked. But I hope you can understand, the Samaritan puts him upon his donkey and pays for all his medical expenses. There's the true neighbour. That's the love that we've got to show. So we've even got to have love and compassion towards that aspect of ourselves that's sick and still needing that light of healing and the manifestation of Mashiach ben Yosef to fully manifest within us. And that will be accomplished, and it won't be fully accomplished till right at the end. So we've got to go through these 49 levels of healing that are equivalent to the 49 levels of understanding. And the 50th gate is refuah shalem, a complete healing, and that brings us into a face-to-face relationship with the name YHWH. And that face-to-face relationship is to know there's only him and nothing else beside. And until we get to that full 50th gate, we're sick. And because we're sick, we did get things wrong. But your donkey, when it's fallen on the floor under the burden of its load, you don't sit there whipping it, making it feel it's no good. You've got to help get the donkey up. Okay, so all these things is stopping us thinking in that. We've got to think bigger. You've got to really think in good ways. How can we interpret reality in a good way that's helpful? Not a bad way that's a hindrance and an obstruction of the name. Let's get realistic with, with the truth, and apply the truth to all these situations that we face in. Okay, so let's go and have a look at this 128 then, because it's a very important number. Behold, it was very good. Let's see what it's connected to. So obviously this is concealed heavily from us. 1100 is the gematria of the three husks of the name YHWH, YHWH, the earthquake, the fire, the whirlwind. So this is in the prophets Eliyahu and Avi. So the wind is 219, the earthquake is 575, which is exactly the same gematria as evil inclination, and the fire is 306, which is exactly the same as Ruach HaKodesh and the holy, Ruach Elohim, and the Spirit of God that hovered over the water. So these conceal the name YHWH, that's what it tells us in Zohar. And so these are the three places, these are the three elements where YHWH was not, according to what we find in the Book of Kings, in an Eliyahu with a still small voice. So first he went, there was the earthquake, the fire and the whirlwind, YHWH was not there, but then he was there in a still small voice. Okay, so we all know that story. Ordinarily, 39, 62 and 27 comes to 128, which is, and behold, it was very good. So somehow that behold, it was very good is hidden. The name is hidden from us in the earthquake, the fire and the whirlwind, and we have to dig deep within ourselves to hear that still small voice. Okay, the still small voice will tell us the truth. And hopefully these teachings, they speak to us in a way that makes us recognise the truth of the name YHWH and help us to reject that false concept of the name YHWH that is construed as a consequence of being subject to eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So 1100 there is plus the regular plus the ordinal comes to 1228. Okay, I won't go through that. This is interesting. This is wonderful, in fact. This is where gematria to me is at its absolute best. So we've got these two verses, to reject bad and choose good, to reject bad and choose good. Okay, in two separate verses. One's the messianic system and one's the Metatronic system. Okay, I'll go show you the actual verses and point out why. 608 plus 620, this is Keter. Okay, this is Keter. And Keter means crown. Okay, so that's what we're hoping to attain. We're hoping to attain the level of the crown, the Yechida. Let's go and have a look at the actual verses, however. Okay, so we've got these two verses. Cream and honey he shall eat when he knows to reject bad and choose good. Okay, so there's a difference here, because when he knows, as in knowledge, Ma'os bara uvahor, and we can see the same words here. This is the messianic system where he eats chema udvash, butter and honey, or cream and honey, as it's really butter and honey. Chema udvash. He eats, so rectification for our eating, when he knows to reject bad and choose good. So what has he got to ultimately reject? He's got to ultimately reject the entire system, Metatronic system, and the name YHWH that is revealed through that system. Okay, how do we know that? Because we've got this parallel verse, if you like. The next verse on, it says, for when the lad does not yet know to reject bad and choose good. So this preceded this, didn't it? So the messianic system preceded this, but then we've been stuck in this system of, we're stuck with all the illnesses from eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. For when the lad does not yet know to reject bad and choose good, the land whose two kings you dread shall be abandoned. Okay. Right, and what we got to learn from that, Ki beterem yeda hana'ar. When the lad does not yet know. This lad here is one of the appellations for Metatron. Why is he called a lad and a youth? There's two reasons why. Because of the verse, train up your child, in the way, and he will not depart from it. This word, the beginning word train, is chanok. It is exactly the same as the name Enoch. Chanok. It's related to that word. And according to tradition, Enoch was Metatron. Okay, and why is he a youth? Because in terms of meta-archangels, i.e. the archangel, the prince of the world, as is what is called in Kabbalistic tradition, Sar HaOlam, prince of the world, as is called also in Revelations, because he was originally a human and he was the youngest angel, because he didn't begin as an angel. He was transformed into an angel. He was transformed into a meta archangel, okay, Metatron, that now governs the entire system on earth, that system of reward and punishment. Okay, so but he's a youth, he's immature, he hasn't got possession of the truth. Look here, Ma'os includes a Vav, Uvaho includes the Vav. So when we've got that truth about Mashiach ben Yosef and Moshe, the truth, Od Yosef Chai, Yosef is still alive, and that empowers Yaakov, that's represented by the Vav, that represents the truth, that is a consequence of these 6,000 years. The Vav represents the 6 days of creation. Okay, so all these things come together when we reach that place of maturity. When what we ultimately rejecting, we're ultimately rejecting this entire system. We're ultimately rejecting that entire system of reward and punishment, that entire way, the entire system that's based on eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We ultimately have to reject that, and all that fear and all that regret and all that pain and all that guilt and all that suffering as a consequence of being sick from continually eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's not just like we did it once. We're continually feeding off that system. We're continually eating. We need to correct that because we're sick. Okay? We need to reject that entire system and start to eat from the tree of life. Okay, so just one more thing. This ties in with what's to come. Da'ath left its proper place in the mind and became part of the body. So Da'ath is the spherot that is in between, the synthesis between Chokhmah, wisdom, and Bina, Da'ath, the masculine divine and masculine feminine, the father and the mother. Okay, so Da'ath is the, I suppose you could say the sun that is in between. This is the spherot of knowledge, okay, that is synonymous with Moshe, Moshiach. So it's all connected. Moshe is known as the sphere of Da'ath, okay, the supernal Da'ath, which is fallen into the flesh. Okay, this caused it, and it became part of the body. This caused it to diminish in quality. A simple way of understanding this is to say that the mind, which was meant to soar above and probe celestial vistas, sold out and became used for mundane purposes. We became preoccupied with our illness. We became ill and weak and only really conscious of our illness and trying to put a band-aid over that. All kinds of ways of looking at it. The test was with the tree of knowledge, Da'ath, as mentioned, because Da'ath decides. So we weren't empowered to make the best decision. We're sick, so we can't decide properly. We're always deciding based on the suffering of our flesh, because we're suffering so much because we're sick, and we're perpetuating that sickness by continually eating of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, being completely subject to this system of reward and punishment. We're not getting really healed from it. Only death heals us from it because it releases us from it. But death should be no more. We shouldn't need to die to experience the knowledge of God. Okay, to be liberated from this system, we shouldn't have to die. We should be able to live and experiencing it in our life now, through our flesh even, through our rectified, healed flesh. But we're not. It's in a fallen state. So we are deciding based on the fears and the hopes that are generated. You know, what's in it for me? If I do good, I'll get rewarded, which you're wanting. But and you're running away. It's like the carrot and the stick again. It's just that whole mentality. It's a constant cycle and a constant battle, and only death can liberate you from that. As long as you're stuck in it, you got to die in a good way through humility, through true humility, which is subjecting yourself to the authority of the name YHWH. So because we can't, and we've got damaged da'ath, we can't make this distinction. We can't choose reject bad and choose good. We're not empowered to reject bad and choose good. We're empowered to reject what we perceive bad from eating the tree of good and knowledge of the tree of knowledge of good and tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And you know, I think I've got myself muddled up a little bit with that. But anyway, so there you go. It's definitely not about it's about getting free of that fallen consciousness and elevating our consciousness back up. So as we can see, that's concealing the name YHWH, and until we are empowered with this, that comes as a consequence of this. We can't get to this place until we look this in the face to face, and recognize it's evil. It's something that we have to reject. You know, until we're mature enough to say, hang on a minute, we really need to reject these religions that enslave us to tree of knowledge mentality. So 608, this plus 620, 1228, exactly the same as the husks. Okay, so being able to, from this, attain this, is equivalent to overcoming all these husks that hide the name YHWH. Then we've got, on that day shall the Lord be one, YHWH, YHWH echad. Okay, so I mean that's I'm not going to go through that, I ain't got time. 128 linked to all these, and linked to and behold it is good. Behold it was very good. That 117, by the way, I will say, is the filling out of Yeshua that we've just seen. YHWH, our God is a jealous God. Okay, we get this, we understand this in a very wrong way, by the way. He's jealous for us to know him. Okay, not jealous in the way that we understand that from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He's jealous for us to know him. He's jealous. And that word jealous, kana, is 151, which is linked to the concept of mikvah. He's jealous for us to know him through Mashiach Yeshua. Okay, 386. It's got a square ordinal of 1280. Okay, linked up to all that. This is a very important number, but I haven't got time to go through it today. And they heard the voice of the Lord God. Okay, so this is them, isn't it? The fall of man. They heard the voice and they hid from him because they was ashamed. So they'd eaten off the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and suddenly YHWH became something they had to hide from. So 1280, there's all kinds of meditations you could go through with that alone. Very important. And the Ancient of Days sat, his raiment was as white as snow. That comes to an ordinal of 128. It's linked up to here. It's also, there we go, 8 times 151. Kana, jealous. He's jealous for us because he created us to serve him and nothing else beside him. And he's jealous because he is the goodness that we were created to desire to receive. You know, so it's not in the same way that we normally understand it. Right, then the Lord said to Moshe, this is part of the most common verse within Torah, Vayoma Adonai el Moshe lemor, and the Lord God spoke to Moshe saying. So it comes to 659, 128 ordinally, this part of it. Like I say, it's in a number of times. I think it's in 70 times, and once in as Vayoma Moshe el Adonai lemor, where Moshe and Adonai is changed around. and I think that's just in once, and I think it's in 70 times all the other times, or 69 times, I can't quite remember now. 659 plus 128, so that's linked up to all this concept. We've got to hear what he really said, not what we think he's saying, not this presenting a demiurge to us. We've got to actually, the Lord said to Moshe, saying, we've got to be aware, because some of the things that the Lord said to Moshe is part of that concealment, isn't it? That we've got to overcome, because we are hearing the words and we're seeing it in a way that is as a consequence of eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Yeshua filled, which is when the Vav is filled with the Yod, 532 plus 127, which comes to 659. So we see again a link between Moshe and Yeshua. You can't thoroughly understand what Moshe says without understanding the Torah, without marrying it to the Torah of Mashiach ben Yosef. It just becomes YHWH, being like the demiurge. You're not getting true knowledge of YHWH. You've got to marry them together. You've got to unite the revelation within the letter of Torah to the revelation above the letter of the Torah. With the clouds of heaven. So the clouds, I always think of it like this. We received the Torah and we was under the mountain. It says we're at the bottom of the mountain, but that word is under. And then so that's at Shavuot. At Sukkoth, we're supposed to attain, it's supposed to be like linked to Shavuot, the receiving of the Torah. We're receiving it in fear and trepidation, but by Sukkot we've willfully received it. And the tabernacle is like a chuppah, a marriage canopy. Okay, but so that's like reaching the top of the mountain. And then Mashiach ben Dawid is like, to me, he's like the cloud. He's the cloud that surrounds the mountain. You can go even higher than that. And Mashiach ben Dawid is like, in Moshe we receive it at the bottom of the mountain. Mashiach ben Yosef is the revelation at the top of the name YHWH at the top of the mountain. And Mashiach ben Dawid is a cloud that surrounds the mountain. And that's the uniting of those two. It's something like that. This is my own analogy. So to me it makes a lot of sense, because it comes at the level of Chaya, the soul level of Chaya, and this is a surrounding light, and this is a close surrounding light, and it's likened to garments, okay, like the garments that we wear. It's not a part of the body, but it surrounds it. The clouds are not a part of the mountain, but they surround the mountain. And what's in those clouds? YHWH. Okay, so we've got to attain that level. Okay, 641, 128. Bearing in mind that is my own analogy, by the way. So that's related to all that. Messianic luminaries, spelt defective, again, without the missing vowels, 641. So we've got to take this, which is missing the two vowels that represent Yeshua, that represent Moshe, the Torah of Mashiach Moshe and Torah of Mashiach Yeshua, and we've got to transform that concealment into a revelation. Okay, that brings in the Mashiach ben Dawid. 56 is Teshuvah. So we've got to return from a place of darkness to a place of illumination. We've got to return from exile to redemption, Teshuvah. We've got to return the fallen letter here up to its original status in Gan Eden. Okay, all these concepts. 641 linked. And the two of them went together. 505 is 5 times Michael, 5 times 101 Michael, the advocate. 136 is the ordinal and regular of Kisei Dawid, the throne of David, which is Mashiach ben Yosef. Okay, according to Vilna Gaon, it comes to 641, so that's linked to all that. And who is this? Name YHWH. This is Abraham and Yitzhak going together for the Akedah, which ultimately the sacrifice the ram, and according to Yaakov Shimoni, the ram, he represents Mashiach ben Yosef. He was the actual ram that was sacrificed. And we can see the initial letters, a Yeshu, which is that curse with which Yeshua is cursed from within rabbinical Judaism. Yimach Shemo was Ikro, may his name and his memory be erased. God along that a lot. Chain grace, 58 plus 22 is 80. Square ordinal of it, however, can't be square ordinal, it must be squared regular. Just wait a minute, let me have a look at that. Yeah, it's the squared regular, not the squared ordinal. So 64 plus 50 times 50, which is 2,500. So it's 2,564. 4 times 641. So chain, grace, is related to all these. And then the icing on the cake, who is all this talking about? It's talking about Yeshua. Yod, Shin, Vav, Ayin, where the Vav is filled with an Aleph. Is 523 plus 118, 641. Who guarded the threshold from the hands? This comes to an ordinal of 128. This is a regular of 749. This is the last verse in Tanakh with words that equal 749. So if you run a search on the entire Tanakh for words that combine to equal 749, these are the very last words in the entire of the Tanakh. Okay, the initial letters spell Moshe. Mem, Shin, He, Moshe. Who guarded the threshold from the hands. It comes to 749, which is the regular of Yeshua HaMashiach. So again, you've got unity, Moshe and Yeshua. Okay, 128 linked to all this. Death swallowed up eternally. We've already come across that. 731 plus 128 is 859. Yeshua HaMashiach, that's the ordinal, again the same as that. Regular of Yeshua HaMashiach, that's the ordinal of Yeshua HaMashiach, which is linked up to here. 10 times this equals this. Okay, comes to 859, which is exactly the same as death swallowed up. So the need to die because we're sick, because we've eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and we haven't healed from that, and we haven't rejected that whole system and been able to choose, reject evil and choose good, because we have not manifested the healing that comes about as a consequence of the provision that Yod YHWH made for us through Mashiach ben Yosef. That's represented by that. All this is pointing towards that. So all ways of looking at it. You could go on and on. It's absolutely wonderful. Okay. So what have we got now? Okay, I need to go back. Let's go back. And I need to go back again. Okay, so that's done with Gnosticism. The main problems with Gnosticism, and hopefully I've offered an answer to, drawn out the light, but you attach it to the root and you've got something there that's that can help us, that empowers us. Okay, the more light, it's light that can empower us and inform us, and we need that light. And there's light hidden everywhere. We need to gather it all together, all the wisdom together, that ultimately reveals that final the name Yod YHWH in truth. Okay, so now let's have a look at this Sophiology that I feel is very much linked to Gnosticism. So first of all, what is Sophia? It is wisdom. Okay, it is a major theme along with knowledge, Gnosis, among many of the early Christian knowledge theologies grouped by the heresiologist Irenaeus as Gnostikoi, knowing, or men that claim to have deeper wisdom. Gnosticism in 17th century term, expanding the definition of Irenaeus's group to include other syncretic and mystery religions. Okay. In Gnosticism, Sophia is a feminine figure, analogous to the human soul, but also simultaneously one of the feminine aspects of God. Gnostics held that she was the Syzyge, I think that's how you say it, female twin divine eon of Yeshua, Jesus, the bride of Christ, and Holy Spirit of the Trinity. She's occasionally referred to by the Hebrew equivalent Achmoth, which is Chochmah, okay, wisdom, and Prunikos. In the Hamandi text, Sophia is the lowest eon or anthropic expression of the emanation of the light of God. She is considered to have fallen from grace in some way, in doing so creating or helping to create the material world. So as far as I can see, she's linked to this whole concept of the Shekinah that's fallen and descended into exile with us. Okay, so like I say, some truth in that. This female aspect of divinity. Okay. We're going, the way that I'm looking at, the reason why I'm looking at this is because sometimes it can help when we see an error contained within another belief system that is parallel to a belief that we actually hold within our own incorrect belief systems, but because we've adopted this line, never known any different, we don't challenge it. But when we see it in the context of another belief system, it's sort of like, we think, oh gosh, I'm getting that wrong. I've got hold of that wrong. There's elements of it truth, but obviously I've got hold of it in a twisted, distorted way, and that needs to be corrected. Okay, so this is a major theme within Judaism and Kabbalah, the whole fall of the Shekinah, the descent of the Shekinah, etc. In Russian Orthodox mysticism, Sophia became increasingly indistinguishable from the person of the Theotokos rather than Christ, to the point of the implication of the Theotokos as the fourth person in the Trinity. That is Virgin Mary. Okay, so which is, the Virgin Mary is seen as Sophia, and in a way she is, because you've got really this whole the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's really the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit represents the female divine, doesn't it? The Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'ath. But there's another aspect to the name YHWH, that final ehe, which you can see parallels this concept of Sophia and this concept of Miriam within Christianity, this concept of Sophia within Gnosticism, and Miriam within this mysticism. There is some truth in that, because she does represent, if we're going to parallel that to truth, then this in some way represents the fallen letter He, that represents the fall of the Shekinah into exile with us, that we need to shuv He, to shuv ha, repentance is bringing back that He to the original status, okay, in Gan Eden before the fall, or to the status of the first He of the name YHWH. So we can see there's some truth in all this. It's obviously distorted in lies as well. I've got to be careful not to get bitten by lies. Bulgakov's theory, known as Sophianism, presented divine wisdom as consubstantiality of the Holy Trinity, operating as an aspect of consubstantiality, physis or natura. These are he's just telling you what this means. I've got a definition coming up in a minute. Or hypostaticity of the Trinity of these three hypostases, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, which safeguards the unity of the Trinity. So somehow this Sophie that is somehow linked to Virgin Mary, that, as I've pointed out, it would suggest is somehow linked to that fallen letter He with it that we find within Kabbalah. Kabbalah, that is ultimately part of the name YHWH, that is connected to the whole concept of the Mashiach, because the Mashiach is the revealer of the name YHWH. Okay. We can see that. We need to go and look at some of these terms so we know what these are. So Theotokos is the Virgin Mary up here, which is linked to Sophia, especially according to this Russian Orthodox mysticism, and possibly within Gnosticism. Hypostaticity, in terms of theology, is pertaining to or constituting a distinct personal being or substance. So even though the Holy Trinity, there's one God, there are three distinct aspects to that Godhead. if you like. That's what it's really talking about, that being the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then this consubstantiality, especially of the three persons of the Trinity, regarded as identical in substance or essence, though different in aspect. So they are seeing, which is true, isn't it? If you take the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit as representing the Yud, the He, and the Vav of the name Yud, He, Vav, He, then the Virgin Mary would, this Sophia that's descended, that appears to have parallels with the concept of the Holy Shekinah, descended into exile with us, fallen from grace, fallen from her original place, connected to the name Yod He Waw He, and somehow through our efforts below we push her up to that original status, okay, through keeping the Torah and mitzvot according to Judaism, and through acting like Mashiach, Yeshua, in terms of Christianity and things like that. So we can see that this here in Russian Orthodox mysticism, Sophia became increasingly indistinguishable from the person of the Theotokos, to the point of the implication of the Theotokos, I think that's how you say it, as a fourth person in the Trinity. So that would be the name Yod He Waw He. The Trinity represents Yod He Waw, and then Virgin Mary is Yod He Waw He, who's fallen. She's not attached to the name. And then this affects the whole flow of divine revelation and abundance coming into the world. And when you see it like that, you think, hang on a minute, if that's the case, then is what I believe through Judaism and Torah correct or incorrect? You've got to start to challenge these concepts. Where did it actually come from? And is it correct to see it in those terms? And is there something lacking in that concept and in that belief that's actually obscuring? Is there something lacking, or some lie concealing something that's actually obscuring the unity of the name Yod He Waw He? So we can look in there and we can say, all right, well, when we're looking at it from Gnosticism and Russian Orthodox mysticism, we can see the problems with it. But when we're applying it to ourselves, we are accepting this same belief in a slightly different way, but it's essentially the same belief. It's just garbed up in what we call it, the rabbi said this and the Torah says this. This interpretation of the Torah says this. But does it? And could it lead to problems that actually conceal the name Yod He Waw He? Is this notion that we hold in and this belief that we hold in the consequence of eating from the tree of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, or is this connected to the tree of life and a true revelation of the name Yod He Waw? We've got to start to challenge it then, haven't we? We've got to start to challenge it, and sometimes looking at these errors that actually show that we believe exactly the same thing, except we've just given it different names and different words. It's essentially the same thing. Is that problematic for us? Is that a hindrance for us? Is it an obstacle for us? Is it the wrong kind of consciousness of the name Yod He Waw He that's stopping us from being able to reject reject the entire system of reward and punishment and choose to be attached to the hidden system, the system of perfection, the tree of life? So we're looking at these, got to be careful that we don't get bitten. But, it's like the serpent becomes the cure. Looking at these serpents and lies can actually heal us of our own serpent bite. Okay, so looking at Sophiology again. Adapting. Right, we're going from here. The theme of this, I've just clipped this from a book on Sophiology. The theme of Sophia as eternal femininity, the actively passive entity who is God's revelation to himself as self-surrendering love, the love of love, or hypostaticity, the distinction between the being of God as love and his immersion into nothingness resulting in the creation or the created Sophia, Jesus Christ understood as the hypostatic union of the divine and the created Sophias, or the masculine divine and the feminine divine. These are all concepts. It's the name YHWH. It's the name YHWH. It's the name YHWH connected to the WHWH. It's unity between female and male divine. It's just the same concept. The Theotokos, which we've been told is Virgin Mary, which is synonymous with the letter H of the name YHWH, being the apotheosis of the created Sophia, that's deification, apotheosis of the created Sophia, the Virgin Mary being the deification of the created Sophia, which resembles the female divine, okay? Man as the soul of the world, apostatizing Sophia, and finally all of Sophiology. Sophia is, it must be remembered, divine glory, being expressed in the tradition of the worship of the church. So it's really Kabbalistic, because it's unity between the male divine, the female divine, and that unity between Virgin Mary and the Ruach HaKodesh, that's the male divine, the Vav of the name YHWH, with the He that resembles Virgin Mary, and give birth to that is Moshiach ben Yosef, Yeshua. Okay, so it's the same thing as what we get in Torah. It's just garbed up in different ways. It's garbed up as the name YHWH, and that name YHWH is given a coded name. It's called the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and the Virgin Mary. Okay? Is there problems with that then? Is that the way we should be viewing the name YHWH? Okay? Problematic. When we see it, when we look at it like this, it starts to, well, just wait on a minute. Is that the actual truth? And is that the pinnacle of our faith, our belief, to bring unity between the female divine and the male divine in order to give birth to Moshiach? Is that the pinnacle of our belief system? Is that what we're working towards? Is that what we're trying to attain through our mitzvahs? Knowing the Jewish mitzvahs, the keeping the 613 mitzvahs, and all the prayers. The purpose of these prayers, it tells you, for the purpose of the unity of the name, for the sake of the unity of the name, Yod-He and Vav-He, Yod-He with Vav-He, and everything is done with that intention of bringing unity between the masculine divine and the feminine divine of the name YHWH. It's no different from this. But is that what our ultimate goal should be? Is it what we should be aiming for? Because the mitzvahs are the actions that we do, our thoughts, words and deeds that are somehow linked to our body, that is somehow needs rectifying from the sickness of eating from the tree of the knowledge. And these whole mitzvahs, these 613 mitzvahs that we are doing to bring about this unity, should that be our intention? Should it be? Is it the ultimate expression of love? Let's go and have a look. So these are what I've written. So Mashiach is identified as the hypostatic unity between the divine and created Sophia. Sophia, which is wisdom, divine glory, love of love, the divine feminine. Is the whole of creation therefore to reveal this unity? YHWH, to reveal himself to himself, because it's only a part of his own name. YHWH revealing himself to He, and YHWH loving He, and He loving YHWH. It's love of love itself. To reveal his love of himself to himself throughout creation, that is seen as the embodiment of this divine wisdom, isn't it? And express that through Moshiach. So these come together and then give birth to Moshiach. So is that union, that love of love itself, to be expressed through Moshiach? Because that's what it's looking like Christianity is, and that's what it's looking like Judaism is actually based upon. That this is the goal of Christianity, this unity, the Father, and to be immersed in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and then all that connected to, Virgin Mary and stuff like that. What are we getting wrong then? Theotokos, Virgin Mary, being the deification, apotheosis of created Sophia wisdom. Therefore, this virgin wisdom, Sophia, female divine, united with the Ruach HaKodesh, which is the masculine divine, and birth Mashiach ben Yosef, that is the unity between wisdom, Sophia, and YHWH, is actually the wisdom, Sophia, represented by the fallen letter He of the name YHWH. So uniting that with the name YHWH, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the love of love. So God basically loving himself and revealing himself to himself, saying, look, here I am, love me. Is that a foundation of our belief? Because it looks like it is. And we've got to see, well, if that's the case, and we can see from within Sophiology, well, it can't possibly be just that. Even though it's giving it different names, it's garbed up in idol worship, isn't it? This whole Virgin Mary worship and stuff like that. Let's just go and ask the right questions that we need to ask them. We need to be able to recognise that this is not enough. This is not enough. There has to be more than this union. There has to be total and real independence. There has to be two totally distinct entities that are actually completely separate from one another, that choose to love one another freely, and because they are each worthy of each other's love. Okay? It can't just be God revealing himself to himself and God loving himself. His love for himself being part of his own name, loving himself. It can't be that, because we're talking about YHWH. So if our entire belief systems are based on this, something's not quite right, is it? Let's go and have a look. So this erroneous religion belief system is going to highlight for us a problem within our own belief system, a very big problem, because we might just be off target if we're not aiming at the right place. Torah, by the way, means to hit the target straight on. See Egyptology as an example for why this love is flawed in and of itself. So it gets a little bit messy. When we're going to have a look now in Egyptology, this is not designed to deter. I've got the answers. I feel I've got the answers at the end. So don't get worried. We're just going in exposing potential errors in our belief system that's going to transition us from that system of, it's going to heal us from our sickness. Our sickness is the consequence of continually eating the lies from the lies that the serpent keeps feeding us. We need to heal from that. We need to stop eating the lies and start eating from the tree of life. So we're going to have a look at Egyptology now, because we're going to see that the same belief system was within Egyptology. And the Torah links us to Egypt. All the patriarchs had to go into Egypt. Bnei Israel were exiled first into Egypt and then redeemed from Egypt. But Moshe, the Torah of Moshe, is exiled into Erev Rav mentality. What's Erev Rav domination? It's Egypt. They were Egyptians. We can see that still influences what is dominating Judaism today. Because we can go and have a look at the belief system of Egypt, and it's just totally and utterly parallel to the belief system of Rabbinic Judaism. And that's what has gone on into Christianity. Christianity was birthed out of Judaism, but we can see that it's been rooted in, I wouldn't say it's got to be corrected, it's got to be rectified. We've got to see the truth in it and but take it away from the darkness, the lies. Okay, so the Eye of Ra and Shekinah. The Eye of Ra, or the Eye of Re, is a being in ancient Egyptian mythology that functions as a feminine counterpart to the sun god Ra, and the violent force that subdues his enemies. The violent force that subdues his enemies. Okay, the Eye is an extension. The Shekinah is called the Eye. It's linked to the eye, and Jerusalem is the pupil of the eye. Okay, the eye is an extension of Ra's power, equated with the disk of the sun, but it often behaves as an independent goddess. Okay. This goddess can be like Sophia. This goddess can be equated with several particular deities, including Hathor, Sekhmet, Bastet, Ra'et Tawi, and Mut. The eye goddess acts, listen to this, as a mother, sibling, consort, and daughter of the sun god. She is his partner in the creative cycle in which he begets the renewed form of himself that is born at dawn. Kabbalah, you've got the rising of the Hasidim at midnight, the the righteous at midnight, to subdue the forces of evil and to comfort the Shekhinah in exile among those forces. Shekhinah is called mother, sister, wife and daughter, etc. So obviously the feminine divine has got to contain within it all the female relationships. So, and the masculine divine has got to contain all the masculine relationships as father, son, brother, husband. So it's got to they've got to contain that, because we're talking about Yod He Wawe, and there's only Yod He Wawe, and there's masculine and feminine aspects to that name Yod He Wawe that contain everything, like all the relationships that I've just said. But it starts to get a bit messy, doesn't it, when we're structuring our belief system on thinking about Yod He Wawe in these terms that are a little bit jumbled up and based on Egyptology. We've probably inherited this, okay, and we've probably tried to there was wisdom given over to Egypt, okay, that is, it's mentioned in the Zohar that Egypt got more wisdom than all the other nations, but then that wisdom was taken off them. So we can go and have a look and see the traces of this wisdom. There is light in these lies that we need to remove it in order to redeem that from those lies and build up those vessels of shalom, fulfill our purpose for creation. Let's go and have a look though. So they were mine. The eye's violent aspect defends Ra against the enemies of disorder that threaten his rule. This dangerous aspect of the eye goddess is often represented by a lioness or by the Uraeus or cobra, a symbol of protection and royal authority. The eye of Ra is similar to the eye of Horus, which belongs to a different god, Horus, but represents many of the same concepts. The disastrous effect when the eye goddess rampages out of control and the efforts of the god to return her to a benign state, are a prominent motif in Egyptian mythology. So this is, again, it's related to the Kabbalists rising at midnight, to subdue the forces of evil and comfort the Shekhinah, so the forces of judgment don't rampage out of control. The whole begging and pleading on Judgment Day, Yom Kippur, and all these kinds of things. It's the same thing. It's parallel to this. Is that what the goal of our spiritual life should be? Are we getting something wrong? If this is the goal, are we just trying to, are we getting it wrong? There is an aspect of this I talked about in the video that I did on Yonah, about the power to subdue the forces of darkness, the forces of judgment. And Yosef is the power, is the Yesod. Mashiach ben Yosef is the Yesod that enters into the sea, that enters into the Malkuth and brings her to a place of shalom. Okay, so there is something in that that's true and right, but we can see possibly we're not quite connecting all the dots up, because it looks a whole lot like Egyptology, what we believe in. This whole concept of Mashiach ben Yosef, being the power that subdues these this powerful feminine divine that can rampage out of control and bring a lot of darkness and judgments into the world. Okay. The Eye of Ra was involved in many areas of ancient Egyptian religion, including in the cults of many goddesses who are equated with it. Its life-giving power was celebrated in temple rituals, and its dangerous aspect was invoked in the protection of Pharaoh, of sacred places, and of ordinary people and their homes. So, seeing the problem in our own beliefs, seeing the problem with the Eye of Ra in our own beliefs. Okay. So this is from Wikipedia. The Eye of Ra can be equated with the disk of the sun, and with the cobras coiled round it. There's 2 cobras coiled round the disc of the sun, and with the white and red crowns of the Upper and Lower Egypt. So white and red crowns. Let's go and have a look. This sounds very much Kabbalistic. The red and white crowns being the crowns of Gevurah, red, and the crowns of Chesed, white. Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt being upper and lower Chokhmah, wisdom, possibly, or the 2 crowns of Da'ath that have fallen into exile and separated. So Da'ath, knowledge, has 2 crowns that should be up on top of Da'ath. It should be one on top of the other, a red crown and a white crown, one on top. This is within Kabbalah, honestly, Kabbalah, that have fallen into exile. So when our knowledge fell from the place of the skull, it fell into the flesh, Edom, Esau, evil inclination. The crowns fell off it, and one went to the left arm, one went to the right arm. One went to the left arm, red, judgment. One went to the right arm. Okay, that have fallen into exile and separated. They should be one on top of the other, but instead are separated to the right and left arms because Da'ath has fallen from the place of the skull, Golgotha, into the flesh. So where was Yeshua, Mashiach ben Yosef? Where did he die? He died at Golgotha. He's the serpent on the stake that brings healing to us right at the place where we fell. We fell from that place into our flesh. We need to look back to that place for the healing that has been caused by being bitten by the snake that caused us to fall into the flesh, our Da'ath to fall into our flesh. So this whole serpent, and you can see the parallels. Okay? So is this in and of itself the pinnacle of our faith and belief system? So we've got 2 things now, haven't we? We've got this whole raising up of the Da'ath, the whole overwhelming the power of the serpent, and then we've got the whole unity of the male and female divine. It's getting a little bit messy. We need to sort this out, don't we? So exile, Egypt's exile must therefore represent wisdom, Sofia, question, or fallen Da'ath, knowledge, question. That's when I've put SCL, these are my initials. This is what I've wrote based on what I have researched. Okay, so these are my own questions to myself, but I'm sharing them with you. The serpent represents fallen Da'ath or knowledge. So basically, where we, like the Domi hats, and I've mentioned this before in my teachings, the Domi hats of Egypt, which represents exile, right at the forefront of the head they've got the cobra in all those Domi hats that the pharaohs wear. So in where you should have Mashiach, which is our supernal Da'ath, knowledge, we've got a serpent there instead, false Messiah basically. That's what I'm trying to get at there. The serpent represents fallen Da'ath, knowledge. He's in the place, but YHWH, instead of this serpent that bites us, he put the serpent that heals us in the place of Golgotha, where our Da'ath fell and where we've got a serpent there instead. So in that same place is Mashiach ben Yosef on a cross, cursed for us to be healed. We've got to be healed of the diseases of our flesh, the poison that we eat daily from eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Okay, so all the time Da'ath is falling into exile in the flesh of the body, the serpent, false Mashiach is in the place of Da'ath, which is our consciousness knowledge of YHWH. So if the serpent's there, we don't have the knowledge of YHWH, we have Metatron. We have we have a lie, we have an imagination, we have ego-fueled imaginations. Because our flesh is sick, so our flesh dominates over our soul. We're not healed. We're not healed because we haven't seen the truth that is before us in Mashiach ben Yosef. We haven't seen that serpent on the cross, the serpent on the staff that heals us when we've been bitten. True knowledge of YHWH can only be understood through Moshe, Mashiach, who is the transmitter of this knowledge and the knower of this knowledge itself, the legitimate son of the divine union. So we've got a false son there, we've got a legitimate son there, isn't we, serpent. The rightful place of Da'ath is Golgotha, the skull. Okay. It's very exciting, really, isn't it? Can we see when we're looking at these things, we can actually reveal powerful concepts and truth that we need now. We need these things. We really need to be able to perceive what YHWH has been doing in truth, not what the serpent has been telling us. The Eye of Ra is seen as both the female consort, the mother, a womb of Ra, equivalent of the Shekinah as represented in Kabbalah, and a goddess in her own right. There are several eyes, goddesses of Ra. Ra, adult, has relationships with his mother, sister, wife, daughter, and gives birth to a son, brother, father, husband, who is a rebirth of himself. Okay, can we see there's problems with this whole concept of the unity of Yod-He with Vav-He, the female divine, the masculine divine. Okay, we can see there's problems with that, because that can't be. Our whole job cannot be to create that unity with what is called the female waters and the upper waters, the masculine waters. Our whole service cannot just be to bring those two together, because that's not enough for me. Love of love itself, or Yod-He-Waw-He revealing himself to himself, is not enough. Okay, it can't be enough. Even us, with our power of reason that is exiled, can clearly perceive, even a child could perceive, that can't be enough. That is not enough. The whole goal of creation, to bring unity between upper waters and lower waters, there must be something more to it than that. But the basis of the faith of Christianity and the basis of the faith of Judaism would indicate that is the pinnacle or the goal, because the entire prayer service is toward that end, and the entire concept of the mitzvah is towards that end. And then when you've done enough of that, you'll get rewarded when you die. Okay, not enough. It can't possibly be the entire truth, because we can see, looking at this from within Egypt, it can't be the truth, because it looks a bit messy. Okay, we've got to be a bit grown up about it. Like I say, the feminine divine is going to include all aspects of feminine relationships, all roles of being feminine, and the masculine, all roles. So we've got to be grown up about that. Father, mother, sister, wife, daughter, somehow relating to the son, brother, father, husband. Okay, so we've got to be mature about that. That is essential. Okay, so let's go and have a look at this then. This is how it's connected to the concept of Shekinah. So I've already read that, I'm not going to read it again. The Zohar compares the Shekinah to a mother, sister, daughter and bride. Kabbalists are also associated Shekinah with the clouds of glory, which guided the Israelites during the wandering in the desert, and the pillar of fire that warmed them at night. In this telling, the Shekinah is a protective maternal presence of the Israelites' journey from slavery to freedom. So again, this pillar of fire, and then a pillar of light, and this protective thing, just like the Eye of Ra protects Ra. Okay. It's unbelievable, the parallels. Just had an inspiration there. Let me just consider it. Oh yeah, that's it. The messiness of that. The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Somehow the Holy Spirit, which is a part of the masculine divine, makes love and impregnates the fallen Shekinah, fallen into physical reality, actually an actual woman, and gives birth to his own son that is considered the actual God. In Christianity, I hope you can see the parallels, because it's like this. When you go and actually read the story of Ra, we're looking at the Eye of Ra here, but the actual God Ra, he's birthed every morning, he's related to the sun. So the sun bursts through the horizon, which is considered the womb of the Shekinah, bursts through the horizon, and then he's a baby Ra early in the morning, the son of his own mother, sister, wife, daughter, the eye of the goddess, the Eye of Ra. He bursts through the belly and becomes born of his own sister, mother, himself, basically. A female aspect of himself. He's born of a female aspect of himself, and he gives birth to himself in his immature state, which is his own son. And then suddenly, through the end of the day, he ends up adult, at the level of father, makes love to his own mother, the eye god, his own mother, you know, because Yeshua is the son of Virgin Mary, but she is part of the divine name YHWH. So we've got it here, haven't we? We've got Ra giving birth, growing up, and at the end becoming the father, having the father's son, whatever else I've said, father, son, husband, brother of his own sister, mother, wife and daughter. And then it's starting all over again, giving birth. So every day we're uniting, you know, through our daily Torah and our daily prayers, we're uniting the name YHWH together. This is the goal of all our service within Judaism, and then whatever we do within Christianity, you know. We've got to really take a step back and see, is there any problems with this? Haven't we? Because we can get caught up in that cycle. If we're not hitting the target, we'll be poisoned by the delusion. We'll be poisoned by the lies and the darkness. When we look at it in Egyptology, it's quite clear, though, isn't it? So the Eye of Ra, Shekinah. Shekinah is associated with Malkuth, kinship, the lowest of the Sefirot, of the intermediary between the upper emanations and the material world, the recipient of the divine energy flowing from above just prior to its manifestation in physical reality. In some accounts, this makes Shekinah the closest sphere to the material world, as in we've got Sofia that has descended, fallen from grace. Got the Holy Spirit, the Shekinah, that's descended into our material world, and the part of divinity most readily experienced in nature. The idea of the Shekinah is a counterpart to the masculine element of God, is, according to the Kabbalah scholar Gershom Scholem, one of Jewish mysticism's most significant innovations. The fact it obtained recognition in spite of its obvious difficulty in reconciling with the conception of the absolute unity of God. This is a problem, isn't it, when you've got concepts like this? You know, God is one. How is he one? Well, he's in all these parts. So again, there's problems with that. And there is no, because when you've got male and female, then you've got a possibility of separation as well. You know, is there really a possibility of separation? So this must be a means to an end. What is the end then? If we've been put, if this is part of the concealment to bring about the ultimate revelation, what possibly could be, how can we use this concealment to bring about the ultimate revelation of unity and oneness of YHWH? There's only good and nothing else beside. There's not this raging, rampant, female divine aspect of reality that's creating all these ferocious judgments. Is that the truth? Is that really YHWH that we're serving? We're even aware of that, the whole concept of that, to be found within Christianity and Judaism. Is that the truth? Is that YHWH? Is that the knowledge that's going to liberate us? Okay. But we can look at it, can't we? So it says, the fact that it obtained recognition in spite of its obviously difficulty of reconciling with the conception of the absolute unity of God, and that no other element of Kabbalism won such a degree of popular approval, is proof that it responded to a deep-seated religious need. Golem wrote, deep-seated a religious need of whom? Of the Erev Rav, that were the Egyptians that came out of Egypt, bearing all this religious belief system that somehow Moshe, the Torah is Moshe, is exiled into. So got to think about it. What have we really inherited? Truth or lies? Truth or lies? Because if we've inherited a lie, and this is not really the name YHWH, this is some counterfeit, then we need to distinguish between that counterfeit and the truth. Because the truth is what will set us free. So again, we can look at this again, Eye of Ra, but the truth we don't get handed to us on a plate. We've got to take all the lies and transform it into the truth. The Egyptians often referred to the sun and the moon as the eyes of particular gods. This is looking a lot like Judaism as well. You know, the sun and the moon, the two Mashiachs, the right eye of the god of Horus, for instance, was equated with the sun. and his left eye equated with the moon. At times the Egyptians called the lunar eye the eye of Horus and called the solar eye the eye of Ra. So this is again the concept of Mashiach to be found. It's related to the eyes, related to the sun and the moon. Ra being the preeminent sun god in ancient Egyptian religion, both eyes were represented by the wedjat symbol down here, stylized human eye with the facial markings of a falcon that signified Horus. The Egyptologist Richard Wilkinson believes the two eyes of Horus gradually became distinguished as the lunar eye of Horus and the solar eye of Ra. However, Rolf Krauss argues that no text equates the eye of Horus with the sun and moon until in late Egyptian history, so the eye of Horus must have originally had some other significance. Okay, this is what gets me, because in Kabbalah it's like a moving target. Everything that's false is, you can't pin it down. Torah, you fire an arrow straight and it hits the target. When it's not Torah, you fire an arrow and the target's continually moving because it's fluid. It can be one thing or the other. It's like a shapeshifter. It's a serpent, it's a reptile, it's a lie. So it's an illusion, it's a delusion, it's fantasy and fiction, it's not really there. It's like a mirage. You think it's Torah, it's moving all the time, so you can never really totally pin it down. And these are what false beliefs do. They move, they change form, they change shape, they confuse us, so we can't really discern what it actually is we're looking at. Metatron's like that. I've talked about this before. Try and find out exactly what Metatron is from all the sources that we've got. It's a moving target. It shifts shape. You think you've grasped the concept of Metatron and it shifts again. The only thing you can do is turn away from it. It can't be the truth. It's constantly changing. We told you how YHWH changes not. This is not YHWH, then it's constantly changing. Because many concepts in Egyptian belief are fluid. The roles of the two eyes frequently overlapped, changed. One such area of overlap is that in myth both Horus and Ra lose their eyes respectively. Lose their respective eyes. Sounding familiar? Sounding familiar because in Rabbinic Judaism, when they were presented with Yeshua, they removed his eyes. They took the letter ayin from his name, which represents an eye. Okay, so we can see this cannot be in and of itself the truth. And we cannot be bound to a belief system that this is the foundation on which we serve and worship YHWH and perceive YHWH. It's just false. We've got to reject it then, haven't we? And that leads us to answer that question then, if that isn't the pinnacle, if this isn't of itself the goal to which we're aiming, how can we transform all that we've learnt and all that we've experienced and the truth that must be hidden in there, because no lie sustains without truth hidden in there. Nothing can exist without a spark of truth. Nothing can exist without some aspect of the name YHWH within it. Okay, so what's the truth then? And this is my answer to this problem, and what I can perceive the tree of life is, and where our ultimate goal leads to, and how we can marry all these, get the light out of all these belief systems, and build a better, more truthful picture of what it is we're supposed to be doing, and the pinnacle of our entire service. Okay. So the pinnacle of creation or service to YHWH is redemption from self-love. Okay. So we've got that YHWH with WHWH, the whole Trinity, which is basically God just revealing himself to himself, or God loving himself from him. Loving himself and giving birth to himself through himself. That cannot be it. It can't be the pinnacle of our understanding to figure that one out. Okay, so let's have a look at an alternative. A remedy for this problem. The entire pinnacle of creation is not love, unity between the masculine divine and the masculine feminine. This is what I've been able to deduce so far. And I think I'm pretty on target. This is a reflection of YHWH's love for himself, which cannot possibly be the pinnacle of love because it does not allow for total independence of entities that freely choose to love each other because they can perceive for themselves that which is worthy of love within the love. YHWH cannot have set this whole system up simply to love himself and to reveal himself to himself. Okay, let's just get that bit straight. That cannot be YHWH. That is YHWH. He was a demiurge. That's YHWH perceive when we're eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and we're too sick to know any different. However, this divine union, I'm talking about it from a mature point of view. I'm talking about that from a mature point of view. Now, not like, the complications that we get when we see the divine feminine in terms of mother, sister, daughter, wife and father, son, husband, brother. Okay. However, this divine union of the love of love gives birth to Mashiach, Moshe, for the Jews, Yehuda the Jews, who bears his name, the name of his unity, birth through Yaakov and Leah. So we know Yaakov, which represents the Vav, had two wives, Leah, which represents the upper hair, and Rachel, which represents the lower hair. So this is the holiest way that I can discern the light that's hidden in all this confusion that we get from religion. Then the divine love of love gives birth to Mashiach ben Yosef. So we give birth to Mashiach through Leah, Yaakov and Leah, who comes in his name also. We got Yosef in the Christians, and this is through divine union of Yaakov and Rachel. Then these two brothers, Yehuda and Yosef, that at first hate each other due to the exile into which YHWH placed them to create independence, and suspect each other of evil, which we know from within Judaism that there was hatred between brothers and baseless hatred, and that baseless hatred also caused the destruction of the Second Temple, have to find a way to unite, which is what I've been talking about in my teachings, uniting the stick. The revelation of the name YHWH is found in Moshe with the revelation of the light of the name YHWH is found within Christianity, because the highest form of love is brotherly love. Okay, as we see in the life of King David and Jonathan, the prototype of Mashiach ben David, and through this love that is totally independent of each other, the imperfection of love itself is fully corrected. This is redemption from self-love. So yeah, we start off with that self-love, but that gives birth to higher and higher revelations, doesn't it? Gives birth to Mashiach, gives birth to Mashiach ben Yosef, and those two brothers become separate from one another, and through exile grow hate towards one another, because they are both placed in separate exiles, and they only can perceive that light of brotherhood is hidden in Erev Rav and Edomite exile. They can only perceive the outer evil that both are exiled into, but over time they build on that truth and break free them husks, and then that brother Yosef reveals himself to his brother Yehuda. Okay, and then that love for each other is what ushers in King David, and we are given a prototype of this love through King David. So that self-love that is, we can see the flaws in it. It's not the pinnacle of creation. It can't be, because it's something that even our little minds reject. That is not what it's all about, but it's a necessary evil, isn't it, to bring about the final redemption from it. Okay, it's where we start, but it's not where we end. This brotherly love is the light to the nations, and through this the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of YHWH as the waters cover the sea. And the evidence of that, the pinnacle of creation, brotherly love, we can see it in David here. And it was, as he finished speaking to Saul, that Jonathan's soul had become attached to David's soul, and Jonathan loved him as himself. And Saul took him on that day and did not allow him to return to his father's house. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. And Jonathan stripped himself of the cloak which was on him and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword, and even to his bow, and even to his girdle. And David went out wherever Saul would send him. He would succeed accordingly. Saul appointed him over the soldiers, and he was pleasing in the eyes of all the people, and also in the eyes of Saul's servants. Okay, that's 1 Samuel 18. So we've got this example, this perfect example, that under David, we've got this concept of brotherly love, which, as we can see, is so much greater than self-love, because it came from a place of independence. It wasn't in Jonathan's best interest to love David more than himself, because he was the heir to the throne, and David ultimately became the heir to his throne. So it was total unselfish love, love for the sake of heaven. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. You were very pleasant to me. Your love was more wonderful to me than the love of women. Okay, so it's not about, ultimately the pinnacle is not just marrying together the female, the concept of the female divine and the male divine coming together and revealing the name YHWH. It's uniting those two revelations of the name YHWH together in brotherly love, and for that then to enter into the vessels of shalom that are perfected physical reality. Okay, and I've talked about that a lot. With that then, I will say shalom. Please subscribe.